Hey team, Yasin here, and in this training, we're going to be going through the step-by-step process of your program's support and community and walking you through how to exactly include it inside of your transformation program and your transformation product. So let's go ahead and hop right into it. Of course, we are continuing our theme inside of this training of launching your remote wellness practice version 1.0, as well as completing the final trainings for you to go ahead and get your remote wellness certification. And then just a quick reminder that the training outline here in the Google Docs is going to be your best friend whenever referencing through guides for these trainings, especially trainings that are like the one that we're about to go through, in which there are a lot of reference material, there are a lot of step by step. And so in addition to this main training that's going to provide you the visual of those steps, you are also going to want to go ahead and follow along with the steps in the guide as well. And so being able to use that outline format here in Google Documents is going to be extremely beneficial for you. Okay, so just a quick reminder for that. And then with that being said, let's go ahead and hop right in and talk about what this training is all about. So inside of this training, we are going to go ahead and break down the remaining two pieces of your transformation product. So if you remember, there are three main pillars of your transformation program. And obviously we've already spoke extensively about the training piece of this, but the other two main pillars are your support as well as your community, okay? And so what we're going to be talking about inside of this training is really starting to be able to complete the other side of your transformation product. Because if you remember, we did talk also about the flywheel effect, and the flywheel effect is basically when different pieces work together in order to be able to promote each other. And that's exactly what happens when you have a good synergy between each of these three components and how all of them work together, right? And so the big thing that obviously you are familiar with, and what we did primarily in the previous module, was we primarily focused on the coaching calls, which was the training element, as well as the strategy session piece of your entire process. And the reason we did that was because the most difficult part of this entire process, of your entire product, all of that really has to do with finding your voice. And that is why we spent so much dang time on those practice calls, right? I'm sure at this point you remember how much time we spent going through those practice calls and giving you the foundations, the done for you, do it yourself approach. So that way you could actually go ahead and really start to find your voice. And then as you're going to see throughout this entire training, the support and the community elements of your transformation product are a lot more streamlined. They're a lot more succinct. It's just a matter of, hey, step by step, and then you understand how to use them, right? And so other than that training piece, obviously, we do also have to go ahead and talk about that support and community, right? And so that's exactly, like I said, what we're going to talk about inside of this training. And the reason that we had to wait so long in order to actually go over support and community is because of the fact that we needed a way to be able to communicate with your students, with your customers, and with your clients, right? Because obviously, in order to be able to provide support, you need a way to be able to communicate with them. And so what happened is that before this module, before we talked about launching your remote wellness practice, you had no way in order to actually communicate with your students, with your clients, with your customers. There was no way for you to do it unless you were going to actually go ahead and use your personal email or your personal phone number, and you were going to go ahead and text your students through that personal line of communication, right? Now, obviously, as you are running a professional entity, being able to use your personal line and do all of that is going to be very difficult, right? You don't want to have to give out your phone number to people. Yes, they're your customers. Yes, they're going ahead and being a part of your program, but at the same time, they're not family and friends, right? So you want to have a little bit of protection. You want to have a little bit of that separation there. And so what changed inside of this module is that we now have access to the client kit. The client kit is the glue that is going to hold the entire system together. It is the foundational piece. And that's why we spent so much dang time really going ahead and creating that partnership with the organization, really being able to go ahead and negotiate on your behalf. And then really at the end of the day, footing the bill for you every single month, because that is when we recognized that it was so absolutely critical for you to be able to have that foundation. And so now that we have access to that powerful software, the client kit, we can now walk you through step by step how to actually set up your support and community. And so in the previous module, we spent a significant amount of time finding your voice. And now in this module, with all of the setup that we have now, we can go ahead and really nail putting together your support and community. Now, the big thing that I do want to go ahead and emphasize before we actually get into the step-by-step for your support and your community is to really go ahead and talk to you about the theme of this training. And this is going to be very important for you to go ahead and pay attention to, because of the fact that the theme of this training is really going to go ahead and allow you to understand how this training is structured, okay? Because you're going to see that throughout this training, there's a lot less, hey, do this, do that, this is our recommendation, this is exactly the way that you got to do it, all of that. There's not going to be a, hey, this is exactly the way you got to do it. That's not going to exist inside of this training. Why? Because what we've done is we've designed this training in order to actually provide you the tools. It's designed to be able to put on the table everything that you could potentially do and you could potentially use. And so we're going to be giving you everything, and then it is going to be up to you to be able to go ahead and decide what exactly you want to be able to include for yourself and your program. Okay, so unlike some of the other components of your transformation program, there is going to be a lot more flexibility when it comes to your support and community, right? And the reason for that being is because some RWPs, they love to interact with their students, right? They love to be able to have that ongoing communication throughout the entire week, multiple times a day, while other RWPs inside of their remote wellness practice prefer only to interact maybe on the coaching calls and maybe only in the support email here and there. And so at the end of the day, there is going to be a lot of flexibility here depending on your style as well as your preference, okay? So some people, because of the fact that they want to run their remote wellness practice in a certain way, are able to go ahead and pull off being able to communicate with their students less. And they know how to be able to manage that. They know how to be able to set those expectations with their students. While other RWPs, they are really going to struggle if they don't have as much communication with their students. And so ultimately, what you're going to get from this training are the tools that will allow you to then be able to make the decisions of how you want to run your program. And the beautiful thing about taking this approach is that it really goes ahead and provides you the freedom to be able to figure out exactly how you want to customize and get creative with this. And so as you're going to see in just a moment, the skills and the tools that you are going to get are really going to go ahead and unlock for you unlimited opportunity when it comes to being able to provide support and community and resources for your students. And so that is the overall theme of this training that is going to be different. It's freedom and flexibility. And so although we have talked many times in the past for you not to be a remote control student, for you not to expect to be spoon-fed, to not follow blindly in the past, right? All of those concepts are going to be put on steroids here in this training, because we're going to provide you the tools, the skills, and the freedom to be able to customize the support and the community for your own remote wellness practice, as well as for your own transformation program in whatever way that you want, both now as well as forever, regardless of if that is in the one-on-one model, if that is in the hybrid model, it does not matter. You're going to have all of the tools on the table for you to be able to decide and customize from there. And so with that being said, what we're going to go ahead and do, and now that you understand the theme of this overall training, right, you're going to understand how this is structured, we're now going to go ahead and hop into the first piece of this entire puzzle of really putting this together, the first major tool in your tool belt. We're going to go ahead and right now talk about the support pillar of your entire transformation program and your remote wellness practice. So let's go ahead and talk about your program's support. Okay, so your program support system is all of the interaction that happens in between the coaching calls that you have with your student. Okay, so hypothetically, let's go ahead and say that you have a running standing appointment with your student for 12 weeks. On Tuesdays at 6 p.m. is when you have your coaching call with the student, right? That's something that works for the student, that works for you. That's when you guys have your ongoing coaching call. Well, the question is, what is the support that you are providing on all of the other days of the entire week, right? Maybe you don't have have any support on Sunday because you're taking Sundays off, right? But hey, how does the actual student get their questions answered on the days that are not the coaching call days, right? Are you adding additional layers of accountability? What happens throughout the rest of the entire week? All of that is what we are talking about when we talk about support. Now, obviously, we're discussing this on the one-on-one model, but this same logic also applies in the hybrid model. And as you've already seen, because obviously Remote Wellness Academy, we ourselves run the hybrid model, you've already experienced what support looks like on that avenue, right? You're going to go ahead and see some of the different options in terms of one-on-one group coaching calls. You're going to see the support email. You're going to see the student community. All of these are potential ways in order for students to be able to get support outside of the actual training piece of this. And so, like I said earlier, this is where there is a lot of flexibility based on what you want to do for your remote wellness practice, right? Do you maybe not want to provide additional support other than email? Hey, that's totally up to you, right? Do you want to be able to provide daily accountability support? Maybe, right? Maybe you want to provide every other day support, right? Do you want to provide unlimited support, right? How often do you want your students to communicate with you in between the coaching calls? And so at the end of the day, it does not matter how you decide to be able to provide the support at what cadence, as long as that expectation is set with the student from the very beginning, right? So if you tell them, hey, I'm going to provide for you daily accountability, here's the support line that you can text, or here's the email, and then you don't actually provide that, then the student is going to be upset with that, right? But they're not going to necessarily be upset if you go ahead and tell them, hey, we're going to communicate one time a week, and then all of a sudden you are communicating a little bit more daily, right? They're not going to be upset with that because of the fact that you're over delivering. But the big thing here is that you want to make sure that you are setting the expectation and you are actually meeting that expectation at a bare minimum, if not over delivering. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and share with you our experience on the things that we have tried and what has worked for us. And then it is up to you to decide what you want to be able to include for your students. And so the very first piece of this that we're going to go ahead and discuss is really being able to provide support around questions, right? Because this is going to be really the most common support that students need. Obviously, there are many ways to be able to provide support through accountability, support for XYZ, but support for questions is going to be something that is the most common, because it is normal for students to have questions throughout the week in between the coaching calls, right? Now, there are multiple routes and different support channels that you can provide to the student in order to get their questions answered, right? You can have a support email. You can have a support text messaging line. You can have the student community. You can have one-on-one group coaching calls weekly, right? And so what support channels you provide is going to depend on a number of factors, such as how many active students do you have? Do you even offer text message accountability, which we're going to talk about in just a second? Do you even have enough students for a student community? This is also another question we're going to touch on when we get to that point inside of this training. And then on top of that, do you offer one-on-one group coaching calls throughout the week as well, right? So all of these factors are going to determine what sort of route you go ahead and provide for your students in order for them to be able to get support to get their questions answered. And so let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about this and talk about the different avenues and the support channels that are available, as well as a little bit more details around this. So let's go ahead and first talk about support email. Okay, so what we have found from our experience is that the support email is the most sustainable support channel, and it really allows you to be able to slow down that rate of communication. That's why it's the most sustainable, okay? It's literally just an inbox, and it allows you to be able to have a little bit of a distance in terms of when the student expects a reply, right? Instead of the student being limbic or just dumping on you or saying, hey, I have a fire here, where you at? Most people know how to use email in the way that it is going to slow down the communication. Unfortunately, sometimes you are going to get some students who use email like they are text messaging you, so they'll literally send you like 15 different emails with like one sentence each. Those students, quite frankly, they just don't know how to use email. They don't understand how the email support channel actually works, right? In terms of communication through email, right? But for most people, most professionals, they understand that email is a little bit of a slower rate of response than maybe text messaging. And that actually works to your advantage because it forces the student to think through their question, so that way they are clear. So that way they're actually able to understand their own issues before they actually dump on you to be able to answer their questions. However, Because of that slower rate of response, because email has more resistance, it also reduces the amount of questions that you're going to get. Now, there's pros and cons to this, right? It doesn't mean that students don't have those questions. It just means that because email is a little bit more resistance to reach out to you than compared to, let's say, text message, they're just not asking those questions, right? And so especially in the beginning, when you are in that one-on-one model, right? Yes, the support email is definitely good. It's definitely a foundational piece. It's kind of like the catch-all. It's like, hey, if we don't see your question, right, make sure you go ahead and send over the support email. You're going to see we do the exact same thing here at RWA. It's like, hey, yes, we have the student community for support. Yes, sometimes we also offer the text message line or, the chat icon or whatever. But if we don't see it, the support email is really the place you can kind of have organization around everything, right? But in the one-on-one model, you want to go ahead and maybe maintain a little bit of a closer relationship. So in addition to having the support email, you might offer something else in addition to that, like text message support, which is something that we're going to go ahead and talk about in just a second. Okay, so that is a support email. Those are some of the pros as well as some of the cons, but it really is the bedrock and the foundation of your support, in our opinion, in our own experience, is the support email. Okay, then the next other support channel or authorized support channel that you might have inside of your remote wellness practice is a student community. Okay, now a student community is a separate pillar inside of your transformation program because there are other uses for the student community other than just support. So we're just talking right now about the student community for the purposes of support, but later on inside of this training, we'll go ahead and talk about the student community for other purposes as well, right? But here's the thing about the student community. The beautiful thing about the student community is that it allows for other students to be able to see the answers to the questions in a public format. So that way other students can go ahead and have their questions answered at the same time. And that really is an advantage because of the fact that it allows you to be able to lower the amount of support tickets that you are going to get because of the fact that students are basically answering each other's questions. They're asking questions that students have that they don't then need to ask themselves, all of this kind of stuff, right? And so that is the advantage of having a student community and some of the benefit that it provides. But again, this is going to be something that we touch on later on inside of this training because you have to have enough students to justify having a student community. Okay, so that's kind of what the student community element looks like when we are talking about support. And then finally, another authorized channel before we go ahead and talk about text messaging here is going to be the one-on-one group coaching support, right? So in between the coaching calls that you have throughout the entire week, you might also decide to go ahead and include what we call one-on-one group coaching calls on Zoom. And what these one-on-one group coaching calls are, is it's kind of like what you are experiencing in some elements when you have the coaching calls here in the RWA program. Is like you have all of these students who are on Zoom, but then you're able to bring a student on one-on-one, and you can go ahead and have a conversation as if it is one-on-one, but then the other students can learn from osmosis that way as well. And so it's almost like you are taking that group learning element from the student community, and you're bringing it onto Zoom in a live format. And so what it does is it allows other students to learn from each other and then also get questions answered that they might actually not even know that they have. And so as a result, this is another element that is going to reduce the amount of support tickets that you have because you're going to start to see if you ever get to that point where you are offering one-on-one group coaching support, because obviously you have to have enough students to justify it. However, what you're going to notice is that students say, oh yeah, that was my question. Thank you so much. That answered it for me, right? And so maybe that is another element, right? Remember, the theme of this entire training is that we're opening your eyes to the different tools. We're introducing you to these different elements. And so maybe that's another element of support that you decide, maybe not now, but maybe as you go along, you decide to include that inside of your program as well, right? So it's very similar to the one-on-one group coaching that we have as a part of the RWA program that you're also going to notice, right? There's the recordings, you're able to go ahead and access the recordings, there's the notes. And so it goes ahead and further takes off the burden from the amount of support tickets that you would have to answer on a one-on-one setting. And so these really are the three additional support channels that are kind of supplementary, right? Obviously the email is foundational, then you have student community and one-on-one group coaching support. But the biggest one that is in addition to the foundational email support is text message support. And I want to go ahead and talk to you about that right now because honestly, text message support in a one-on-one format changes the game for support. So obviously we have the support email, that's the foundation. Cool. We're not touching any, that's like the foundation there, right? And then obviously we might sprinkle in in one-on-one group coaching calls. We might sprinkle in student community for support. That's maybe optional, maybe depending on when we get there. But text message support works alongside email support as a potential foundational element, okay? And especially in the one-on-one model, the thing about this is that because you are new to this entire game of online income and coaching and being a remote wellness practitioner, all this kind of stuff, your goal really is to have as much interaction and learning that you can get from each student that you are dealing with, right? Because ultimately, once you get through about 10 one-on-one students, that's when you can start making that transition over to the hybrid model and really start to be able to free up a lot more of your time. And so because you might not be yet the best coach, the best RWP, you might want to purposely, if possible, sacrifice some of that comfort that comes as a result of being a better coach. You might sacrifice that distance from your students in order to be able to learn more. And let me explain what I mean by that a little bit more, okay? Is that when you actually become a really, really, really good RWP, you're a really good coach, you can afford, because you've already done the repetition to be able to learn a lot of things, you can afford to have a little bit more distance. And so that way, maybe you're not dealing with the support tickets and all of that kind of stuff because you've handled hundreds of those already. You know the answer to the question that the student is going to have before they even ask that question. And so when you have that level of experience, you can start not only handing this off, right, the support inquiries, you can start handing that off to other members of a team maybe that you start to build. Maybe you start to be able to offer a little bit less of that support because the value of the words that you say starts to become so high that you don't need to have as much closeness and proximity to the student because they value what it is that you're going to say. But when you first start off in that one-on-one model, you're just starting off, right? You're saying a lot of words, but the amount of value in those words is not as high because you don't have as much experience. You don't have as much repetition, right? And so you might sacrifice some of that comfort that comes from, I don't have to be answering support tickets all the time. That comfort that comes from that distance of it, you might sacrifice that in order to be able to actually learn faster, right? And so one way to be able to do that, yes, we talk about the support email and all the foundational piece of that. But the other way to be able to do that and learn really, really quickly about what students struggle with and how to be able to answer that and how to become a better coach is by offering text message support to your students. And so text message support has a number of benefits that is going to allow you to be able to maximize what it is that you are getting out of your transformation program. Because remember, this is not only for your students and for your clients. This is also something that you are getting experience out of, so that way you can learn to be able to provide value more and more to the people that you're dealing with. Because remember, the amount of income that you bring in, this is how business works, and you're going to learn more about this in the Game of Money module, is in direct proportion to the amount of value that you provide to the marketplace. And so if you are not yet making the income that you want to make, the question that you need to ask yourself is that why am I not yet able to provide the value to the marketplace that will allow me to be able to make the income that I want to make? And so text messaging is what allows you to be able to provide more value as well as learn how to become more valuable. And so an additional benefit of this is a couple different things. Number one, daily accountability. Because through text, it's easy for you to be able to communicate with your students on a daily basis, as well as check in on their progress throughout the week in between the coaching calls, right? This is a way to be able to provide that support that maybe that support email doesn't provide, right? Support email is a little bit of a slower means of communication like we talked about. And so if you email somebody, it's like, you might get an email back like every 1 day, every 2 days, every 3 days. But if you text message somebody, all of a sudden there's a lot more communication that's going on a regular basis. And so text messaging allows you to be able to provide daily accountability if that ends up being something that you want to include. Remember, that's a big if. You may decide that you don't want to provide that, okay? It all goes around what it is that you want. We're just opening your eyes and introducing you to the tools of this, okay? The other big benefit about this is that it nurtures the relationships. With daily accountability, with text messaging, you're going to find that your stick rate with the students is significantly higher because you are a part of their daily routine. You're a part of their text messaging. You're a part of their entire life, right? Rather than it just being once a week kind of thing, right? On top of that, it shortens your learning curve because of the fact that you are having to communicate communicate with your student a lot more. So you're able to go ahead and get more insight and learn a lot faster rather than having to wait an entire week to hear what the student actually struggled with. And then on top of that, really being able to provide text message support increases student results as well, right? We've already talked about the study that the American Society of Training and Development did, in that 95%, right? The likelihood that you're able to go ahead and achieve a goal goes to 95% when you have accountability with a specific person, right? So it increases student results. And then another benefit of it is that it allows you to also be able to increase your prices, because things like one-on-one tech support, daily accountability, even though it is high touch point, right? Even though it is something that maybe doesn't scale as easily as maybe a remote classroom or something like that. But the truth is that that high touch point is also high perceived value. And so you're also going to be able to charge more for your programs when you're adding those elements into your offer and into the way that you're talking about your program on the strategy session. And so these are just some of the benefits that adding text message support provides, in addition to the other aspects of support that we talked about. But here is the thing, and this is very important for you to understand, is that this does come along with a support warning, okay? Because especially in the beginning, opening the door to your students and providing too much support, especially through text, because text is one of those platforms that is extremely, extremely easy for somebody to go ahead and just send you like a gazillion text messages, right? It's extremely, extremely dangerous, and this extremely dangerous game for amateur, newbies, and beginner RWPs who do not yet know how to properly set and manage expectations with others. Why? Because here's what's going to happen, is that if you are not strict with your ground rules and firm with your boundaries when you are providing support, your student will absolutely get the impression that you are a firefighter and you are their firefighter, and they're quickly going to go ahead and learn learned helplessness. If you don't know what learned helplessness is, I highly recommend you learning about it. Google it really quickly, because learned helplessness is where somebody learns how not to help themselves, right? They cannot even go a moment and think by themselves without texting you, because of the fact that you have taught them that whenever they struggle, you are going to come in and save the day. Because remember, growth requires energy. And we talked about how the brain loves to be able to prioritize conservation of energy, right? That's what it does. And so if the brain doesn't have to think, it doesn't want to think, it doesn't want to grow, it doesn't want to change. And so if every single time they have difficulty and they immediately just whip out their phone and text message you, and then you come to their savior, right? You're their savior, then what's going to end up happening is that they're never going to actually learn how to think. And so I want to make this 100% clear. This is completely and utterly unacceptable for you as an RWP, okay? This is a big, big, big mistake that amateur newbie beginners make, and I want to go ahead and warn you about this from the very beginning. If your students get to the point where they are texting you or emailing you or, asking you for support multiple times a day, and they are leaning on you so heavily, this is absolutely a failure from the side of the RWP in communicating proper expectations and being able to empower your students to learn how to think rather than lean on the RWP too much. If you recall throughout this entire program, how many times have we repeated, hey, don't be a remote control student. Hey, don't be expected to be spoon-fed. Hey, don't follow blindly. How many times have we said that? The reason we did that is because we recognize that true education is not the memorization of facts. It's not being able to just text message somebody so that way somebody answers your questions. True education is learning how to think. And so from the very beginning, we were going ahead and priming you and preparing you to be able to think rather than having to learn helplessness from us. And so unfortunately, some amateur, newbie, beginner RWPs, and honestly just most business owners in general, what they will do is they will jump to the conclusion, oh man, this customer, this client, this student, they're just a bad human being. They're just a needy, clingy human being. Oh, it's their fault. I'm telling you right now, nope. That is not the answer, and that is not the solution. It's all about 100% ownership and responsibility, okay? So if your student does not respect boundaries, I'm telling you right now, as an RWP, as an online income earner, as a remote wellness practitioner, it is a fault on your side, okay? Do not let your brain, even for 1 second, think that it is the fault of the student. It is 100% on you. Because if you open that door to think that, it's the fault of the student, right? They're just a clingy student. They're just somebody who's needy. They just want to go ahead and, they want to be spoon-fed all the time. Well, why didn't you set the expectation? If you open that door to think that way about your student, that they are clingy, then you're not going to be able to actually take the ownership that is required for you to be able to change, okay? And so I'm telling you right now, it is absolutely a skill that you will learn how to actually empower your student without coming off as mean or cold, okay? I'm telling you in the beginning, especially those who don't have practice setting boundaries, communicating expectations, all of that kind of stuff. Whenever you start that process, whether that be in your personal life or in your professional life, it comes off initially as mean or cold. You don't know how to do it properly. You don't know how to do it with empathy. You don't know how to do it respectfully. And so in the beginning, you're just like, hey, right? It comes off mean or cold. It's fine. You're going to be able to learn the skill set, but the goal is for you to be able to try, because skill equals knowledge times reps. You're going to go ahead and learn the knowledge of not letting your students step all over you, of not letting your customers learn helplessness, right? You're learning that knowledge, but then through repetition, you're going to learn how to be able to actually execute it on a way that has empathy, that has respect, that has a way that doesn't turn somebody off, okay? And so that is the big thing I wanted to go ahead and warn you about from the very beginning, because I have seen this so many times with amateurs and newbies and beginners when they're starting out and they start to provide support. The thing is, welcome to business. Welcome to actually earning an income and providing value to others, right? You're going to have to deal with others, right? People problems are most of the problems that happen in the world, and you're going to learn the skill of being able to manage those problems, okay? Now, some additional tips that I do want to go ahead and provide for you guys so that way you can make sure that you are able to go ahead and manage those expectations is that some ground rules that are critical is, number one, really making sure that you are setting the expectation of what the purposes of allowing text message accountability support are, right? You're communicating clearly, hey, the reason for this accountability support is really just there to be a gentle reminder and light accountability. This accountability and this support, the support email, the text messages, all this kind of stuff is not meant to replace the coaching calls that you and I have every single week, right? So you being able to communicate that, putting that in places and reminding them. Remember, humans need to be reminded more than they need to be taught. It's normal for us as human beings to forget things. For you to have the expectation that you say something just once and somebody else is going to remember it for the rest of their life is silly, and honestly, quite frankly, it's a little bit egotistical. You're going to find this not only with your family, you're going to find this with your team as you start to grow your organization, you're going to find this with your customers. You have to repeat yourself over and over and over and over again, and you're just going to have to get used to that, and you're going to see throughout the trainings, right? If I got sick and tired of repeating the things over and over and over again, and I said, oh, you know what, the students, I said that one time, they're dumbos for not being able to remember it all the time. Well, guess what? That's just me being egotistical because other people have other things that they're thinking about, and I'm going to have to repeat it over and over and over again, okay? That's number one. Number two, you want to set the expectation of the hours of replying, right? Hey, during these hours and during these days, you can expect for me to be able to reply, and this is the typical window that we are going to reply. If you go ahead and set those expectations and somebody gets upset with you and says, oh, you didn't reply in half a second, you'll be like, wait a second. So you're telling me you want me to reply in half a second, and I communicated clearly to you from the very beginning that this is the typical reply window? Of course not, right? So when you set those expectations, you're going to have a lot less issues when it comes to providing support. A couple other pieces to this is that you can communicate and set the ground rules that, hey, we are not going to be handling fires or having long form discussions through text messaging, okay? You're going to go ahead and you're going to have this action step, and you're going to be able to text me when you go ahead and get it done for some additional accountability, but we are not going to have this massive discussion about the philosophy of life and whether or not you should be doing this action step and, the 6 ways to be able to learn how to be able to sleep properly and all these other potential discussion topics that could come up. We're not having this entire conversation through text. You're not going to send me the fires that you're having throughout the week and we're going to have this massive discussion through text message, right? Because only 7% of communication actually happens through text. And so the room for us not being able to communicate, for us being able to have a misunderstanding is massive, right? We talked about this example. I'm here for you. And then this person says, hey, I'm going through a tough time. It means a lot. I lost all my contacts. Who is this? This is your Uber driver. I'm here to pick you up, right? And so that is just a typical example. And so you can set the expectation. Obviously, I'm being a little bit more harsh. I'm being a little bit more blunt here because I'm trying to go ahead and communicate this to you as an RWA student. Maybe you wouldn't go ahead and use the exact same words that I'm talking about. Maybe you wouldn't say it as directly because obviously this is a little bit of a hybrid format. I'm not talking to you one-on-one, but the truth is that the gist of this, the meaning behind behind this is very important for you to communicate, so that way the student can understand what the expectations are, right? You can go ahead and communicate with the student. Hey, I know sometimes for some students, it might feel like a fire has to be handled right now, but the truth is that a lot of times we're just putting too much importance and too much emotions to it. We got to let it die down a little bit. So yes, I'm here for you, but at the same time, we don't want to abuse the support channel. So this is kind of the expectation around what we're going to be doing here, okay? And then on top of that, you can go ahead and really communicate to them, hey, this is exactly the communication channel that we're going to be talking on, right? So yes, you can go ahead and SMS text me. Maybe that's a support line that we have, but Facebook Messenger, you sending letters to my house, all that kind of stuff. The difference is that this is an authorized support channel and the other one is not an authorized support channel. And so I want to make sure that you get the question that you have answered in the appropriate time. If you go ahead and, send me a message on Facebook and Instagram, DM me and all this kind of stuff, I may not see it. And so you want to make sure that you are setting the communication channel and what is authorized and what is not authorized, and you're really going ahead and framing it as a benefit to the student. This goes along with that idea of how to be able to communicate this without coming off as mean or cold and all that kind of stuff, right? And so on that note, when we talk about authorized support channels, the question that oftentimes comes up is that, hey, what if a student messages me on an unauthorized support channel, right? A student insists on always talking to me on the wrong communication channel, right? What do I do? Or I told them, hey, we're not going to be handling discussions through text message. And then every single time they message me, they send me a massive paragraph and expecting me to go ahead and solve all their problems, right? Or maybe I told them to reach out to me via the support email, or I told them to reach out to me via the text to support line, but they insist on reaching out to me via Facebook Messenger. Now, a couple different steps on this in the way that we've learned to be able to go ahead and handle this, again, we're just sharing our experience, is number one, you never want to reply to the student on the unauthorized support channel. Now, an asterisk here is that there are exception cases to this, right? Where you might go ahead and reply to them very briefly and then remind them and then continue the conversation elsewhere. But the key here is that you always want to be extremely careful about the habits that the student gets used to talking to you on, right? Because if you told them, hey, don't message me on Facebook Messenger, and then you all of a sudden have a massive conversation with them on Facebook Messenger because they texted you or messaged you on there, well, guess what? You are now actually reinforcing that behavior, right? And so if they go ahead and message you on an unauthorized support channel, you don't want to go ahead and reinforce that behavior. Then what you do is step number two, you go ahead and reach out to the student via the authorized channel and answer their question. So let's say, for example, they Facebook messaged you and you told them to only maybe use the support email. What you do is you go ahead and shoot them an email through the support email and you answer their question, and then you go over to Facebook Messenger and you say, hey, great question. I went ahead and shot you an email from the support email, and then going forward, please, just a reminder, let's go ahead and use the support email because that's the place that I'm going to be able to check and make sure that I can answer your question in the best way possible, right? And then step number three is reminding them, and that's exactly what we just went ahead and did, is like always framing it as a benefit to the student, right? You heard me in that example that I just said. There's like, hey, I always want to make sure that you get the support that you need because I'm here to support you in the best way possible. So please, next time, reach out to us via the support email or the support line or whatever else that you want them to do, so that way you can go ahead and get your question answered properly. So you're reminding them of the benefit that they get of actually following the system that you have in place. And then step number four is repeating it. Sometimes for some students, it might take multiple reminders of having to follow the same sequence in order for them to be able to change their habits to reach out to you properly. Now, again, you're probably going to come off as mean or cold when you are an amateur, beginner, newbie just starting to do this because you have not yet learned the skill of how to respectfully and correctly lead students to respect boundaries, right? Maybe you don't have that skill yet. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But guess what? It's okay. You're probably going to make a lot of mistakes before you finally actually get that skill. And just remember, skill equals knowledge times reps. And so when you stick with it, eventually you're going to get a hang of it. And so that is an example of how to be able to actually handle an unauthorized support channel request, right? So we've talked about the warning. We've talked about being able to set those boundaries, some recommendations around boundaries around support as well, right? We've talked about the different tools of support as well as how to be able to handle this. The question that you might have now is, okay, well, what's next, right? What do we talk about next? So in order for you to be able to provide all of this support to your students, what we're going to have to do is we're going to actually have to set up these authorized support channels, especially the text message side, right? We've talked about the benefit of offering text message support, especially in the one-on-one model. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to walk you through the step-by-step process to be able to provide text message support and email support and your reminders and all that kind of stuff by setting it up inside of TCK. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and walk you through step by step the instructions to set up your ClientKit account with text message and email. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and cut over to a mini training that is going to walk you through that step by step, side by side, so you can go ahead and get that set up properly. So let's go ahead and cut over to that now. All right, welcome to this mini training that's going to walk you through the step-by-step instructions of getting your ClientKit account ready for text messages and emails. And so the first thing I want to go ahead and touch on is that the cool thing about TCK is that it allows for us to be able to send text messages and make phone calls and send emails all without having to use our personal phone or our personal email or anything like that. And so what that does is it allows us to be able to have unlimited possibilities on how we can provide support for our students exactly the same way that you probably experienced with RWA. And the cool thing about that is that all of that was actually done through the ClientKit. And so you are literally getting the keys to the kingdom to be able to go ahead and learn how to be able to do exactly what it is that we have been able to do inside of our organization. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and break up this specific tutorial training into a few different parts, so that way you can go ahead and get each part set up separately. Okay, so the first thing we're going to go ahead and talk about is text messaging setup. All right, so let's go ahead and walk you through step by step on how we're going to go ahead and actually do this. So what we're going to go ahead and do is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get our phone number for the ClientKit. So what we're going to have to do is we're actually going to have to go ahead and purchase a phone number. I think it's only like $1 or something from the mobile carriers in order to be able to use it for business purposes. Remember, this is not something that TCK is making money off of. This is something that they are passing on to us. So any additional cost from the TCK side of things is because they are passing on to us as users the cost that is being billed to them from the phone carriers and the email providers. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and go over to settings at the bottom left. We are then going to go ahead and go over to phone numbers. And then once we actually get to phone numbers, you are going to go ahead and see it says, okay, I'll walk you through this right here. This is regulation information here. I'll walk you through this here in just a second. But what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and click on add number. Okay, so we're going to go click on add number right here. And what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to actually go ahead and purchase a phone number for the purposes of business from the actual mobile carriers. Okay, so obviously you can see on here they have countries that you can pick from. So if you're going to be doing business in, let's say, Canada, and all of your customers are going to be in Canada, you can have a Canadian number. If you're going to be purchasing an American number, you can go ahead and do that as well. And all of the other countries in between that are available here. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to select what phone number country you want, and then you're going to go in here and select the area code. Now, the area code doesn't really matter. You can just go ahead and have it be your local area code that you go ahead and use normally. So in this case, for example, in my area code, it's going to be in Plano, Texas, and Dallas, Texas. So let's say, for example, 469. I go ahead and click search, and then it's going to go ahead and search and find all of the different numbers on here. Now, I stand corrected. I did say that it was $1. I apologize. It looks like it is actually $2.30 in order to purchase this from the actual mobile carriers. And so that's what it's going to look like. It's very, very nominal, and it literally is now your phone number attached to your business that is going to allow you to be able to make phone calls and text messages from, okay? And so you just come in here and you just select whatever phone number you want. You can go ahead and decide whatever you want, okay? And then you go ahead and click on save. Now, once you actually go ahead and click on save, you're going to notice that it actually goes ahead and populates on here, right? So you're going to notice phone numbers, boom, right here. It shows the number that you've actually gone ahead and purchased. Now, for the purposes of this demo account, I did go ahead and purchase this. Now, one thing that's going to come up on here, and I'm going to go ahead and make this clear, is that if you go over to company billing, that is going to be where you can actually see the transactions and the credits that you have available for you that are going to be there for you to be able to purchase credits for text messages and emails and all of this kind of stuff, right? So obviously what you're going to notice on here is that you're going to have your card, and this is going to go ahead and charge credits and balance on here. And then you're going to be able to see all of the invoices that are taking place on here and the details that if you want to see how many credits and all that kind of stuff. All right. So that's where all of that is taken care of. And I'll walk you through that more of here in just a second. Okay. Now, if we go back over here to phone numbers, you're going to go ahead and see on here that when I go ahead and click on this, there's going to be a number of, if you purchase multiple numbers, let's say you have one for the US and one for Canada, you'll be able to switch between these. In this case, we only have one. And then obviously in the guide, there are a lot more instructions if you wanted to see this. But what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and click on edit on here. And then we're going to go ahead and enable call connect feature. You'll be able to see what that actually is. You'll be able to go ahead and put a name to this phone number as well if you want to go ahead and label it on there. As well as here, this is going to be very important. You want to put call recording on. And then here's the thing. There's going to be like a recorded message here. It's going to be like, hey, this call is being recorded for quality assurance purposes. Now, every state has different legalities around this. The way that we have been able to go ahead and get around this, because we're not really going to be releasing this, recording publicly. So if you don't want to have any message show up when that actually happens, you can just come ahead and click in here. And then when you click in here, you can just add a space. And when you add a space, it's going to go ahead and basically get rid of any call recording message on there. Again, totally up to you how you want to be able to do that. Check your legal kind of whatever, but I'll just tell you what works for our experience and what somebody has told us that we are allowed to do. And again, I'm just sharing you for general information purposes. That is what we happen to do. Okay. And then from there, incoming call timeout, you can go ahead and put 60 on here, and then duration 60 on here. That's just the settings that we have. I'm not exactly sure how all that works. We just went ahead and consulted with some tech people, and that's what they told us to do. Okay. Then you go ahead and click on update, and then boom. Now you've gone ahead and set all of that up. Now, what you can go ahead and do is you're going to go ahead and test this entire setup, so that way you can actually add yourself as a contact and text yourself. Okay. This is going to be very important. So let me walk you through how you do this. You go back, and then you can go over to contacts. And then once you go over to contacts, you'll be able to see if you want to add yourself as a contact, you can do so. And then you can actually open up that contact record. And then let me go ahead and expand this a little bit more. What will happen is that it's going to go ahead and load, and you'll be able to go ahead and click on SMS down here. Let me bring this up just a little bit more. You'll be able to click on SMS, and then you will be able to go ahead and text using that phone number. So if I go ahead and go over here and I go ahead and click on and type in test. Now, this is just a random phone number. I don't think this is going to go anywhere. And you'll see even the emails are just bouncing. So I don't know if this is recommended. You probably shouldn't do this. I'm just going to go ahead and see if I run the test and see what happens here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on send. And you'll see here it's not a valid phone number. Okay, cool. So you're going to see that it shows me on here that it shows me who is the account that sent this. And then if I click on these three dots, I can go ahead and get details to see what phone number that was actually sent from as well. Now, obviously this is coming out as unsuccessful, but these three dots and then clicking on details will actually show me like what phone number it was sent to and what phone number it was from and all of that kind of stuff. So you can confirm whether or not it is the same phone number there. The other thing that you can do on here is that on this contact record, I'll walk you through this very quickly. This contact record here is really where everything is controlled for the contacts. You'll see here first name, last name, email, date of birth. You can go ahead and put the contact source, the business name, if you want to have addresses for your contacts. It's a full-fledged CRM. And then this is also where you can come in and add, tags, you can add campaigns, offers. You're going to walk through that here in a little bit when we talk about online classrooms. If you want to go ahead and have DND, DND means do not disturb. So if you wanted to go ahead, because this is what's going to help impact your regulatory restrictions, where you don't want to be messaging emails and phone numbers that are not valid, because then the carriers and the email providers are going to see you as spam. And so if this is, let's say, for example, a DND on text messages, you go ahead and say, hey, if this person told me not to contact them ever again, you can go ahead and click on that. And that way, no text messages will go out to this specific contact. And then on here, this is a big feature on here. If you click on this right here, it will actually allow you to be able to contact this phone number, and you just plug in your headphones and you'll be able to call this contact directly from the ClientKit, directly from your browser without having to use your personal phone. And then you can actually go ahead and use this phone icon right here to make general calls as well. So obviously you can go ahead and call certain contacts, and then you can make general calls directly from the ClientKit using that phone number that you actually purchased, right? So that is how it works on the contact side of things. The other side is that if you go over here to conversations on the left side, this is the other place that you can go ahead and manage conversations that are ongoing. And so you're going to see on here, there's unread, there's recents, and then there's all, right? And so over here, if I go ahead and click on all, you're going to go ahead and see right here that test that we went ahead and sent. And then there are some kind of mini controls here. Not as many controls are if you actually open up the contact record. So if I actually go ahead and let's say click on the icon here, it's going to go ahead and actually take me back over to that contact screen that we were at before. And so all of this is really just a quick walkthrough on how you can go ahead and send messages and how all of that works. And then once you have a contact in here, you're going to learn later on how to be able to book appointments with them and how to be able to manage all of that in here. Okay, so you want to add yourself as a contact, and you want to go ahead and actually send yourself emails and text messages and see if it's actually receiving. Now, if we actually go back over here to the actual guide, a couple very important notes on this that are very, very, very important. Okay, I actually did not mention this, and this is why we have the guide. This is very important, is that if you make a call using the TCK system, it will actually automatically record the call and have the actual recording inside of here. So let's say, for example, this is obviously not a valid number because it's just a test, but if I was to go ahead and call, what would happen is it would show up right here that this call happened, and it was, maybe 30 seconds long or whatever. And then immediately after that, if you have that setting turned on, right here, I'll walk you through where that setting was, is that it'll have the actual call recording if you wanted to go ahead and have that in here as well. And so that way you have reference of what the call happened and all of that kind of stuff. And especially as you scale your team in the future, all of that is already built inside of the client kit. And so the setting that you want to have is, let's say you go over to settings, you go over to phone numbers, and then you click on this edit button here, and you'll see here call recording. As long as that is on, then it is actually going to go ahead and have call recording on there. And then the other couple pieces on here is like, let's say, for example, you wanted calls forwarded to a specific number. Let's say you wanted to add your personal number. And so let's say if anybody called that specific TCK number that you have, it would forward over to your personal number. All of that is also capable on here. And then pass called number on as caller ID. You can see on here, there's some different settings. And then if you ever want to learn more about any of this, obviously you want to go ahead and reach out to TCK Priority Support. They know so much more about their software than we do. And so obviously you can go ahead and use that question mark there, or you can go ahead and on the main menu, you can also go ahead and click on the help library and type in over there, and that will go ahead and walk you through that. Okay, so that is a couple important points there. And then the other point that I do want to go ahead and point out here is about understanding SMS text messaging regulations. Okay, so currently the US phone carriers are actually passing legislation that is going to further restrict registration, and it's going to possibly require additional business information, because what's happened is that since the past elections, what's has happened, especially in the US, I don't know how it is in other countries, but spam calling and spam text messaging and all that kind of stuff has gotten so crazy that the regulation is really starting to increase, and that regulation is under the name US A2P 10DLC regulation, okay? And so that's why when you notice on here, when we went over to settings, and then we went over here to phone numbers, that's why we got this note right here, because new A2P 10DLC brand registration rules have been introduced. Process will be available soon, right? And so that's what they are talking about on here, right? And so TCK is actually going to be handling all of that regulation for us. I remember in the past when we did not have TCK a while back, it was all on us to figure out the regulation. So luckily, TCK is going to be figuring all of that out on our behalf, and they're going to keep us up to date on any changes that we might need to do. And so if there is any paperwork, maybe an EIN number that we need to file and all that kind of stuff, they're going to keep us posted. So that way, if there is any changes, you want to keep an eye out on the phone number section here and check out this right here. If there's any updates, they're going to let us know. Because here's the very important note, is that it's critical to make sure that our phone number, right, whatever it is that you purchase, does not get marked as spam, especially when we are going ahead and doing massive broadcasts, let's say to a lot of people. Because what's going to happen is that your account is going to get banned and blocked from the FCC and the regulatory agencies, okay? Because SMS text messaging as a business is a privilege because of the fact that businesses are doing this at a mass scale, right? On a personal scale, when you have your normal phone number with your carrier, you're just sending messages, to your friends, to your family, and all that kind of stuff. When it's happening on a business level, that is when the regulatory agencies actually have control over that. And so it's very important to make sure that you take it seriously and that you are watching the regulatory agencies there and making sure that you are abiding by the rules there. It's the same way like we talked about for the payment processors and having a good relationship with them. You want to make sure that you are maintaining a good relationship with the phone numbers and the regulatory agencies and the carriers and all of that kind of stuff, okay? Next up, the important piece to understand about this is SMS text messaging costs, okay? So we already talked about this, that if you go over to settings and then you go over to company billing, you're going to be able to see the credits that you have that are going to be passed on to you in terms of text message costs. And we talked about this before, is that the carriers charge software companies who are able to communicate with customers, the carriers charge them fees, okay? So this is not something that's specific to TCK. All softwares in general have this, okay? And it's charged on a per unit basis. And one of the great things about TCK is that instead of adding markup to that, they go ahead and pass that on to us so that we can go ahead and take care of those expenses from the carriers, okay? So this is not something that is paid to TCK. This is a cost that the phone carriers and email providers are passing on to us through TCK, okay? And so the rates that have been communicated to us are of the following: very, very, very cheap. I'm telling you, like, our bill, and we send out like hundreds and thousands of messages, is like very nominal, but still, it is something that's very important to go ahead and keep an eye on. And so it's going to be very important for you as you go ahead and come over here, go over to company billing. And when you come over to company billing, you'll be able to see how many credits that you have on here. And then you're also going to be able to see that this balance basically gets auto recharged on here. These are the settings for that. So let's say, for example, you're like, dude, I'm sending out a lot of messages and, I'm using a lot of credits. I keep getting these like small $10 like charges on my credit card or my debit card or my bank statement, right? And so you're like, you know what? I want to go ahead and increase this and I want to auto charge this, with like $25 or $50 every single time the balance goes lower than, $50 or whatever. And so you can mess around with the settings and you can see that the current balance right now that we have inside of this test account is $8. Okay. So it was $10. It is now $8. And so what that means is that if I click on see details, it'll show me exactly what those $2 got used for. And that's probably because I purchased, that phone number and all that kind of stuff. And so that is where you can go ahead and keep track of exactly what is happening here. So that way you are up to date and not all of a sudden having a massive bill from the email providers and the regulatory agencies and the carriers and all that kind of stuff. And being like, oh, how did all that happen? Well, all of that is going to be documented on here. So you can click on see details and see what is actually happening there. Okay. So if we go back over here to the guide, you're going to see, like we said, the credits are going to be charged that on the card that you have on file. So you want to make sure that if you are not getting your text messages sent, you want to check that your card is actually still active and make sure everything is going over there properly. It's going to go ahead and have credits that are going to be recharged, and you're going to be able to go ahead and see all of those charges on there. So if you ever see anything that's like, oh, TCK, whatever, that you don't recognize, make sure that you come over here and check to see all of the details around what that might actually be. Now, the other point that I do want to go ahead and mention over here is that if we scroll down here, you're going to see that for additional support, you want to reach out to TCK's priority support. And really, as a last resort, go ahead and use us as support for TCK. Because here's the thing, like, we're users of TCK just like you. So yeah, we have a little bit more experience than you. But at the end of the day, TCK is going to know their software better than we do. And so you can go ahead and reach out to TCK. You can go ahead and use their priority support. If you go ahead and click on that question mark, what's going to end up happening is that you can reach out to them via the chat, via the support. And honestly, they have so many documents in the priority support help library. Remember, this is all something that we fought for you as an RWA student to be able to have, so that way we could go ahead and foot the bill for you so you have everything at your disposal. So we highly recommend that you use all of these resources because it is something that we are taking care of on your behalf. And so we would really, really, really recommend that you go ahead and use that so that way you are successful in knowing how to be able to use TCK for the most success inside of your online business. And so that is the priority support for TCK and the text message setup. Next up, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and actually talk about email support and actually setting up email inside of your TCK. Now, the beautiful thing is that email is a lot simpler than text messaging. Text messaging actually has more regulation around it. Email still has regulation, don't get me wrong, but I'll walk you through that right now. So how does the email setup actually work? What we do is we actually go over to settings, which is where we're at right now, and then we go over to email services right here. You see email services, boom, right there. And I'm going to go ahead and close out this screen. And then over here, you're going to go ahead and see all of what is over here. Okay. Now, what you want to do is, I believe off the top of my head, you do not want to click this. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make this clear. Do not click this. Don't click this. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and have a forwarding address. What a forwarding address is going to do is that anytime you send an email from the client kit, right? So you have TCK over here, and let's say you send an email to a student. Okay. And then when the student actually replies, that reply is going to be inside of TCK on their contact record. I'll show you where it goes right now. But then let's say, for example, you're like, you know what? I don't want to have to reply to the student inside of the client kit. Or you know what? I want a notification every time the student emails me so I can see that in my support email, because your support email is separate from TCK. All right. And so what's going to happen is that you have your support email here, and you can add your support email as a forwarding address. So that way, when the student replies to your email, it also gets sent to your support email, and then you can either reply via the support email back to the student, or you can reply via TCK back to the student. Okay, so that is going to be where you go ahead and put that right there. But for the most part, out of the box, email is going to go ahead and work inside of your TCK account very, very easily. Now, obviously, there are some other kind of settings here, BCC emails, as well as forward to assigned user. I'm not too sure in terms of how to be able to use those. As far as we know, we do not use these right now, so you can just go ahead and leave those blank. And then obviously, I'm sure in the help library, TCK has some information about that. But if we go back over here to the guide, we talked about the forwarding address, and then you can go ahead and test this. So this is where I want to go ahead and walk you through the email side. So we go back over here, contacts, we click on the contact, right? We go over here, settings, contacts, beautiful. And then once we're over here at contacts, what we could do is we can go ahead and click on email here at the bottom. And in the same way that we tested SMS, we can go ahead and actually test email as well. So I click on email, and you can see on here, it goes ahead and has, an email. I can go ahead and send an email. And then right here, I can change the email, and I can actually add my support email right here. Okay, so that way, when the student gets the email, it's going to look like it came from the actual support email, even though it was sent from TCK. And then when they reply, it'll get sent back into this thread right here. So you'll see on here, there'll be like an email that looks like this inside of this thread. And so on the contact record, you will be able to go ahead and see every single communication with that specific contact, whether that was email, whether that was text message, whether that was phone call, whether that was recording. Everything is going to be located right on here. Now, obviously, there are ways to automate these text messages and emails. I'll walk you through that here in just a second, but that really is as simple as the email support actually is in terms of setting that up. Okay. Now, it's important to also understand the email regulations. Okay. Email is regulated based on reputation on your domain. This is a little bit different than SMS and text messaging. Okay. And so if you include a lot of spam words in your broadcasts, or, the email providers, Gmail, Yahoo, Microsoft, all of them have these spam filters. And so what's happening is that these email providers are monitoring to see these emails that are coming in, especially from businesses, especially from domains, to see what is the deliverability of the email. And so the deliverability will start to diminish if you are sending a lot of emails that are being marked as spam. And so just so you guys can see this, if I go over here to the priority support and I go ahead and type in email right here, you will see that there is email deliverability 101, right? So TCK has an article on this that you'll be able to read more about how all of this is measured and regulated by the industries, okay? The other point on here that is almost not even worth mentioning, but it is important to, I guess, mention, is that here, understanding email messaging costs, it's literally like 0.001. It's like 1/10 of a cent or something like that. So it's pretty much like free to send emails, like literally, but it is important for you to be aware. Like if you're going to send like a massive broadcast to like 100,000 emails, which I wouldn't recommend because you got to be careful with that kind of stuff, but it is important for you to know the cost of it. And again, it is a cost that is being passed on to us on a per email basis from TCK, and it's going to come from your credits as well, okay? And then in regards to other support around this, make sure you are reaching out to TCK support, and then you can reach out to us as a last resort. But like I showed you just now, if you just go into the help library and type in email, there's a lot of articles that are going to walk you through, email building and outgoing email and email costs and email statistics and email marketing and email builder and email error troubleshooting and deliverability. All of that is available inside of the help library, and they're able to provide amazing support for that as well. Beautiful. With that being said, that is part 2 of this TCK setup and this kind of tutorial and introduction around TCK and being able to use it for different purposes. So that is the email setup. What we're now going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and walk through the actual TCK workflows. And that's going to be part 3 that you want to also be familiar with as well. So what is a TCK workflow? I'm going to walk you through where it is, exactly what a workflow is, and walk you through how to be able to use it. So if we come over here and we click on automation, you're going to see that we have this tab over here that says workflows. Now, right now, workflows used to be back in the day campaigns and triggers. So you might not see campaigns and triggers inside of your account, is because they've gone ahead and merged both of those features into workflows. And so don't worry if that's confusing to you. The workflows is what you really need right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about exactly what a workflow is. So a TCK workflow is an automation that allows you to automate pretty much any communication, any action, or any activity inside inside of TCK. Okay, so with a TCK workflow, you can literally create like anything, like reminder sequences, text sequences, email sequences, unlimited other possibilities. I'm going to walk you through what that looks like right now. Okay, so if I go over here and let's say, for example, I open up an example of like the strategy session reminder campaign. Okay, let me go ahead and open this up and show you what that looks like, right? So on here, this is what it looks like. This is the workflow builder. And then once I'm in the workflow builder, you'll see that I can have a trigger that then starts this entire workflow. Okay, so what is that trigger? Let's go ahead and click on this and see what that trigger is. So if I click on this trigger, you're going to see that the trigger says that if the appointment status is, then it goes ahead and triggers it. So let's say, for example, I say appointment status is confirmed and is in calendar, I don't know, let's just say strategy session, right? And so then if an appointment is booked on the strategy session and it is confirmed, then you want to go ahead and add that contact to this workflow. And so what that means is that if I go back over to that test contact that I had, and if that test contact was to go in and book an appointment, then they would automatically get put into this workflow. And when they are put into this workflow, the rest of all of this is going to happen. What is the rest of all of this? Let's go ahead and look at this example here, right? So I'm going to click on save trigger. And then over here, it's going to go ahead and the very first thing, like all of these are different actions, right? So I'm going to walk you through these different actions. So what it's basically saying is that in this workflow, we're going to go ahead and send an SMS text message that says, hey, and then this says contact name, whatever the contact name might be, right? These are all custom values that we can add. And so this is automatically going to be populated. You are all set for your strategy session appointment on, and then this is automatically going to go ahead and put in the appointment date and time. So I don't even have to touch it. It's automatically going to populate all this information. And it's going to have the time zone in there, and it's going to have, with coach, and then that's maybe your name on there. And you can go ahead and, remove that if you wanted to. It's going to be a Zoom meeting, okay? This is the text message on here, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and click on cancel, for example. I'm not going to test SMS or anything. And then after that, it's going to go ahead and send an email. And so then if I put an email on here, you'll see it's going to have email. It's going to be from this name. It's going to be from email. This is going to be like your support email on here. This is going to be the subject line. And then this is going to be the actual content of the email that is going to get sent out. And so it's going to be like, hey, you've booked this strategy session. Here's your bonus video. You're going to see looks very similar to what happened when you were joining Remote Wellness Academy, right? Or when you were actually booking a strategy session with Remote Wellness Academy, right? It's like, okay, cool. Hey, we have these 4 steps before you jump on here. Here's your Zoom link, all this kind of stuff. Okay, cool. So as soon as they are put into this workflow, this trigger, then it's going to send them a text message, it's going to send them an email, and then it's going to have a wait action. And this wait action says wait for 1 minute, and then after 1 minute, go ahead and send them this other text message, whatever this might be, and then it sends them, okay, cool. After they've gone ahead and done that, what you're now going to go ahead and do, Mr. or Mrs. Workflow, is you're going to now wait for 3 days before their actual appointment. What this means, let me show you what this action looks like on here. It says on here, okay, you're going to wait 3 days before their appointment, and you're going to skip all the communication. That's just an additional setting. So what that means is, let's say, for example, that their appointment is on a Friday, and they booked this appointment on a Monday. So what's going to happen on here is that if they book this appointment on Monday, it's going to immediately send them that text message, that email, and then it's going to wait 1 minute and then send them that text message, okay? Then it's going to go ahead and wait over here until 3 days before their appointment. So let's say their appointment is on Friday at 2 p.m. So 1 day before is going to be on Thursday, and then 2 days before is going to be on Wednesday, and 3 days before is going to be on Tuesday. So then at Tuesday at 2 p.m., it's now going to continue the rest of the sequence on here, okay? So on Tuesday at 2 p.m., it's going to send them this text message, which is a 72-hour reminder. And then 2 days before, which is on Wednesday at 2 p.m., it's going to send them this email reminder. And then 1 day before, which is Thursday at 2 p.m., it's going to go ahead and send them this text message reminder. And so you'll see on here, it's literally an automated workflow. So that way you are not having to remember to send out all of these reminders, right? So here's the 24-hour email. And obviously we have all these built out for you already. I'm just showing you how a workflow actually works, right? So here's the email on here, right? And then you have 1 hour before reminder. You have 10 minutes before reminder, the strategy session. And so that way you're actually reminding your prospects for that strategy appointment that they have, right? Now, if I go ahead and click on this plus button, you're going to see that as actions, I can use workflows for literally anything. I can use it to send out an email, to send out a call, to drop a voicemail. This is a really cool feature inside of TCK where you can record a voicemail, and it's called a ringless voicemail. So you can literally have it so that way it'll automatically drop a voicemail on their phone without you actually even a call. It'll literally just be like, it'll ring one time and then immediately they get a notification like, oh, you have a voicemail, and it'll be your audio recording on here. You can have them send a Facebook Messenger on here. You can have them send an Instagram DM, right? This is all automations. You can have it send a manual SMS, a manual call, add a contact, literally anything that you want to do. Add a tag on here, assign a user, add to a workflow, select a DND, edit the conversation, add a task, have an AI appointment booking bot on here. You can have them do Facebook, all sorts of conversion API stuff. You can go ahead and grant them offer to a membership classroom. You can have an if-else statement on here, a webhook. You can replace other automations in other softwares as well. Let's say, for example, you wanted it to be like, okay, if they do something in TCK, I want it to go ahead and do this in a different software. You can set all of that up. A goal event, math operation, these are a little bit more advanced. If else, like if they do this, then do that, all this kind of stuff. Literally anything that you would want to automate is possible to be automated inside of a workflow. And so that is just a quick walkthrough of what a workflow actually is. And there are literally unlimited possibilities of what you can do inside of a workflow, okay? And so literally the amount of automations that we have set up in our online business is so insane using TCK. We'd probably have to hire like 3 full-time people at like $50,000 a year in income just to be able to go ahead and have them do the amount of work that TCK Workflows does for us. And the cool thing about this is that all of this is included inside of the premium account of the Client Kit, right? So there's other softwares out there like Zapier. Zapier actually charges per task that is executed. So every single one of these is a task. And so Zapier actually charges, I remember before we switched over to the Client Kit, we used to have a $300, $400 a month bill from Zapier for all of these automations. And the cool thing is that the premium account of the Client Kit includes unlimited tasks and unlimited automations, right? For that $997 per month, which in your case, obviously we're taking care of that for you every single month. And so that's the cool thing about this, right? And so you can have unlimited number of automations, and that's how workflows actually work. And so what I want to do next is I want to actually show you how to create a workflow really quickly, just so that way this entire walkthrough doesn't get too much. Save, no, I don't want to save. Because we just messed around with it. Okay, cool. So if I come over here, right, automation workflows, and then I click on create a workflow, you're going to see that there are a number of options on here. And this is represented here on the guide as well, right? So there's a lot of different options on here. I can import, I can scratch, I can have recipes on here. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe start from scratch, but they already have different recipes built out, right? So like appointment confirmation reminders, birthday templates, all of this is already built out. And then we have our own hundreds of different ones that we've perfected over time that you're going to be able to import into your account as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on create new workflow. You're going to see a couple different things on here. Action, it's going to show me the version history of the edit of this if I wanted to go ahead and revert something back. Okay, here's where I can go ahead and set up the trigger. I can go ahead and set up the action on here. Here I can go ahead and test the workflow on a specific contact. So let's say, for example, I wanted to test this on myself. I could go ahead and do that, add myself to this workflow. Here it's basically draft and published. If something is in draft, it's not going to work. It's only for editing purposes. So if you want something to be live, you have to make sure that it is actually published. That's very important. Here you can actually go ahead and rename a workflow, right, using this pencil icon. So if I go ahead and click on here, right here, boom, test 1, 2, 3. If I do that, I'm gonna have to click on save. That's gonna be very important to do. Couple other settings on here. Setting, you're gonna see on here, it's gonna have a communication window. So let's say, for example, I didn't want communication to be sent out, after certain hours or whatever. I could control that on here or anytime. Allowing for multiple, right? If you want somebody to be able to be put into this workflow multiple times, usually allow multiple is a good idea. Stop on response if you want the workflow to stop if somebody replies, depending on the use case, that might be useful as well. A bunch of other settings on here that I'm not 100% sure exactly how work, but obviously we can learn how to do that. History, you're going to be able to see on here the history of the people that have put into the workflow, as well as if you want to push somebody along quicker on the workflow. Let's say, for example, there's a time delay that's like 3 days before, but you don't want it to wait 3 days before. You want to go ahead and push them through faster. There's going to be all these like settings on here that's going to say, hey, go ahead and push them through the workflow faster. So obviously this is a test one, so nothing's in here right now. And then status, it'll show you who is in the workflow right now, which contacts are in the workflow. And then it'll actually also walk you through what stage in the workflow that they are at. Okay, so that is the quick walkthrough on how to create a workflow. I just wanted to kind of walk you through that very quickly. Next up, I want to go ahead and walk you through how to be able to manually add a contact into a workflow. That's going to be very important. So let me go ahead and walk you through that right now so you can see how to do that. that. So obviously triggers are going to be there for you to be able to go ahead and add contacts in here automatically, right? So based off of a trigger, a contact will get added into a workflow automatically if you have a trigger on here. But in some cases, you might want to be able to add a contact into a workflow manually. And so how you would do that, you go over contacts, you want to go ahead and open up the actual contact. And then here on the bottom side, left side, you scroll all the way down and it'll say campaigns and workflows. And then here, you can go ahead and manually add a contact right here, active, add, and it'll walk me through, hey, these are the workflows that you have. Go ahead and add this contact into this workflow manually, okay? You can go ahead and do it here, or you can also go ahead and do it over here as well. So like conversations, you have the conversations here. You go ahead and click on active campaigns or workflows, add, and then you'll be able to go ahead and add that contact into the workflow right there manually. The other point I'm gonna go ahead and mention here is that if you wanna go ahead and search contacts, you can go ahead and click on Command K and click search here on the left side. And then you can actually search all of your contacts very easily. And it's like a universal search. So this is actually also search like a whole bunch of other things like calendars and appointments and that kind of stuff. And so you can search manually over here as well if you would like to. If you have like maybe a lot of contacts, you want to search that way as well. And so obviously over here, sky is the limit in terms of what you could use workflows for. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through a template that we actually have, and you're going to have it imported into your TCK account. If you don't already have it, make sure you let us know via the support icon or email support, but you should have something that we have built out for you and had the TCK team put it inside of every RWA account, is going to be the actual workflow that is called MIA student campaign. So this is a campaign that you can actually add a student in manually, okay? And so this is like customer books an appointment. No, I want to go ahead and delete this. I don't want that to be in here. Delete. Okay, cool. So this is going to be a student campaign that you can add. And let's say, for example, a student ghosts you or something like that. You haven't been able to get contact with them. This is an entire sequence that is almost over a week long. And you can see on here, there is text messages on here that says, hey, how you doing? This is, XYZ from NutriFit Wellness Academy, NutriFit Wellness. We're just checking in. How you doing? Right over here, you'll go ahead and say, it says wait 12 hours and then send them another text message, and then wait 1 day and then send them another text message, and then wait another day, then send them another text message. And you see on here, we've already built this out for you. Wait 2 days, send them another text message. And so this is an awesome campaign that you can actually go ahead and add students in if they ever ghost you or go MIA or something like that, which might happen, which is definitely possible to happen. And so this is going to be something that you can go ahead and utilize on there. And then on top of that, right, in terms of templates, we have so many templates in terms of text message campaigns, email campaigns, MIA student campaigns, failed payment campaigns, reminder campaigns, right? We have spent so much time creating all of these templates that over time, we will be able to go ahead and import into your TCK account. Because remember, that was one of the big contingencies that we had with the TCK team. We said, hey, we need to be able to have a way to be able to import all of these assets into our students' accounts, because if we're not able to do that, we don't want to work with you. And so that's how we were able to go ahead and get that as a part of this entire process. And that's what we talk about when we talk about the plug and play proven playbook inside of that stack. And so this is a part of what it is that we are covering for you on a monthly basis. And so you are going to be able to go ahead and take advantage of that as well. Okay, so this was a little bit of a long-winded mini training. I know this was definitely kind of like a training in and of itself, but it's very important for you to be able to know how to be able to use this important tool. Now, part 4 of this entire process is make sure that you actually test everything. Okay, now that you have set up your SMS, your workflows, try creating a workflow, try adding yourself to it, put a waiting time in between, see if that works for yourself, right? Really go ahead and mess around with all of this, because these are going to be your tools that you're going to be able to customize solutions for your students when you need them for your online income, okay? And then the other important note on this, I'll go ahead and mention this, is that when you do create some cool campaigns or emails or text messages, sequences, or workflows, feel free to let us know either via the student community or the support email if you'd like for us to be able to share them with the rest of the community. We are able to go ahead and do that as well. So if you want to be a contributing member of the community, remember, reciprocity. If you give, you're going to get back. And so that is going to be part 4. Make sure you actually go ahead and test everything. And that is really the complete tutorial on how to be able to use text and email inside of TCK and the insane amount of customizability and all of the tools that are available for you. And so literally you now have the resource that we use inside of our business to do multiple millions every single year inside of our business. Okay, so that was the step-by-step instructions for the TCK email and text message setup. Make sure you go ahead and do that step by step, get that rocking and rolling, and let us know if you have any questions. And so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and cut back over to the main training. All right, welcome back from that mini training that walked you through the step-by-step process of getting your text and email set up inside of TCK. That is actually going to be a foundational piece that we are going to go ahead and lean on when we talk about onboarding, when we talk about setting up your calendar, when we talk about the reminders. And so really being able to set up that text message and email is not only for support. I'm happy that we went ahead and talked about it now. So that way later on, when we talk about all of those other pieces that also use text and email, you won't have to go ahead and set it up at that time. So it's very important for you to make sure that you get it set up now. So that way you will be good to go later on inside of this module. Okay. Now, the other point I want to go ahead and talk about is that I know we said mini training, and it was literally like the opposite of a mini training. It was like a very in-depth tutorial on text message and email setup for TCK. And so for some students, whatever it is that we just went through right now may seem extremely overwhelming, okay? And so I want to go ahead and warn you right now that being able to use the technology and the tools that we are talking about is absolutely a skill. And just like we have been learning thus far throughout this entire program, as you're starting to see, the theme here is that skill equals knowledge times reps. And so being able to use workflows, being able to use text message campaigns, being able to use email campaigns, all of that is a skill that you are now learning the knowledge of, and then TCK Priority Support has even more knowledge and help articles and all that kind of stuff. But none of the knowledge means anything unless you actually have the repetition, because through the knowledge times the repetition, you're going to be able to go ahead and get through this valley of despair, right? Before you actually started this training, you didn't even know how incompetent you were on workflows for TCK. Why? Because you didn't even know that they even existed. And so now that you've actually been exposed to that knowledge, now that you have even a little bit of repetition with it, you're like, oh dang, I am now consciously incompetent of knowing the fact that I'm not that great at workflows on TCK. Well, guess what? Through more knowledge and through more repetition, you're going to get better and better and better until your mind is fully open to all of the possibility and how you're going to be able to use them. So right now, it might not seem applicable. Right now, it might seem theoretical. Right now, it might not seem like something that you're able to actually use. But then the more you actually go ahead and use it, the more you get creative with it, the more it's going to become a tool inside of your toolbox to be able to use. And so with that being said, what we want to go ahead and do now is, now that you have an understanding of the text message and email setup on there, what we're going to go ahead and do right now is we're going to go ahead and in a moment, we're going to talk about the community pillar of your transformation program. However, before we go ahead and talk about that, I want to go ahead and talk to you about an extremely important resource that is going to supplement your training, that is going to supplement your support. And that important piece that we're going to go ahead and talk about next before we talk about the community is the actual piece. And what that actual piece is I want to go ahead and talk to you about the online classroom. Now, you are going to notice that it does say optional on there. I'm going to go ahead and explain to you why we have that optional piece on there, okay? So like we've already talked about in the past, because you are going to be doing the one-on-one model, you are not yet skilled enough, maybe, probably, to be able to provide a hybrid classroom, right? If you were to go ahead and sit down and make an entire training program, because you might not have found your voice yet at that capacity, it might be difficult for you to be able to create trainings that are as engaging that somebody would be willing to be able to pay you the same amount that you would normally have to coach them in one-on-one. They're willing to pay you the same amount for trainings and all that kind of stuff, right? But here's the thing. If you are even not at that level of hybrid classroom yet, what you could be at and what you could potentially use is the online classroom as a resource even within the one-on-one model. And so even though our recommendation is to get at least 10 one-on-one students or clients before moving on to the online classroom, for some students who might have limited time for support, okay, due to maybe their day job, maybe their family situation, XYZ, what they can start to do is they can actually start to include elements of the online classroom as a resource. Okay, now, again, I want to go ahead and emphasize this. Remember the theme of this training, right? All we are doing right now is showing you the tools so that way you can actually choose whether or not you want to use the tools, right? We're putting everything on the table, and it's going to be up to you to decide if you actually want to go ahead and utilize this for your program and for your business, right? We just want to show you what is possible. And so in just a second, when we talk about actually setting up your online classroom, I want you to know that this is absolutely and completely optional, and it is going to be up to you to be able to decide how you want to incorporate this with your coaching calls, right? We went ahead and provided you the done for you, do it yourself approach in terms of, hey, this is the scripts, this is the framework, but then it's going to be up to you to be able to decide, hey, when is this applicable? How do I want to include this? At what coaching call do I want to include this, right? And so you can just decide to be able to include different elements of the online classroom that I'm about to walk you through in just a second. You can actually include those elements with the coaching calls that you have every single week if you want it, okay? So for now, especially in the one-on-one model, they would not replace the coaching calls, right? Because you're still getting that practice in, you're going ahead and making sure that even though those are paid students that you might be getting, those 10 paid students that you're walking them through, you're still getting that practice and learning through that process, right? However, you could use the online classroom to supplement your coaching calls. And what do we mean by that, right? What do we mean by using the online classroom to actually supplement your coaching calls? So, for example, all of the worksheets that you are going to have, instead of emailing them to your student, you might actually go ahead and put them in an online classroom so that way the student has access to them from there. And you might actually go ahead and drip on a classroom. It's called a drip feature that actually releases certain modules in the classroom at a certain timetable. So that way they can't just go ahead and look at everything from the very beginning. And so you might set up this online classroom that we're going to walk you through how to be able to set up, okay? And you might set it up and then drip to the student the unlocking of those modules as they go through their program. That might be an option, right? Or you might have other resources or videos that you want to be able to share with your student, and it would just be so much easier for you to be able to share that and receive that via an online classroom rather than trying to send it through email and the person says, oh, it went to spam and all that kind of stuff, right? And so this is the reason why we are going ahead and talking about the online classroom inside of this training, because it is absolutely a resource to supplement your training, to supplement your coaching calls, to supplement the support that you are providing. So that way you have that tool in your toolbox in case you ever actually wanted to use it. And the beautiful thing about exactly what it is that we're going to just talk about here in just a second is that normally when you are going ahead and signing up for an online classroom software, the reason why in a one-on-one model you would not include that is because it might cost you anywhere between $100 or $200 a month. And that's only if you were going to have, let's say, 3 to 15 products, aka modules in your program, right? Here's a software called Kajabi. We actually used to use Kajabi quite extensively for a number of years. They're kind of like an online classroom platform. And you'll see their pricing, $149 a month for the basic, $199 for the growth, right? For the pro, it's $399 a month, 3 products, 15 products. And so you'll see on here that that is a whole separate software that if you are not cash flowing, if you are not bringing cash flow into the organization, for you to go out there and have an additional expense of $100, $200 a month, $2,000 a year, that's really big when you're getting started out, right? And so you might not have the ability to include as a resource to supplement your coaching calls something like an online classroom, right? But luckily, yet again, this is another software that the Client Kit is going to save us $100 or $200 a month on. And then the fact that it's going to save us on that because the Client Kit already has an entire online classroom setup built in that we're going to go ahead and walk you through, because we already have access to it for that package that we talked about earlier for $0.01 a month only for RWA students and us footing the rest of the bill. Because you already have access to that, you can start to go ahead and start utilizing it potentially as a tool from day number one if you decided to actually do that. And so that is another advantage that the Client Kit and having that from the very beginning allows us to have, that normal people who are just starting out, who are just beginners, may not have access to those tools and may not have access to those options when they are first starting out, okay? And so that is what we're going to go ahead and walk you through right now, is we are going to go ahead and walk you through the Client Kit and setting up an online classroom to be able to supplement and provide those resources. And we're going to go ahead and walk you through how to be able to do that inside of your Client Kit account. So that way, if you decided you want to go ahead and do that, you could go ahead and provide that if you actually want it. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and cut over to a mini training that is going to walk you through the step-by-step of setting up your online classroom. If you wanted to go ahead and use it, let's go ahead and cut over to that now. All right, welcome to the step-by-step instructions for setting up the online classroom and the resources for the online classroom. If you decided that you wanted to go ahead and do it, we're going to go ahead and walk you through that right now. So for the classroom section inside of the client kit, what you are going to do is you're going to go over to sites on the left side, and then TCK actually calls classrooms memberships. Okay, so you're going to go over to memberships, and then after that, you're going to go ahead and click on products. Okay, so let me go ahead and get this red right here. So memberships right there, and then you're going to go ahead and click on products, and you're going to see we have a couple of different test ones that we've gone ahead and put together in here. Okay, so just a reminder, for the actual guide on here, there's going to be a lot more instruction than what I go over, but I just want to go ahead and point out that the guide is going to be something that's going to be helpful for you. Okay, so memberships is what TCK calls online classroom platform, and then each product is what TCK calls classrooms. Okay, so if you go ahead and you click on new product, which is basically new classroom, there are multiple different options. So there is a sprint course, a membership course, a marathon course, a build your own. You can mess around with all of them if you want to choose between all of them or select all of them and test them around. You will be able to go ahead and see all of the different options that they have for different online classrooms. Now, the cool thing is that only the Client Kit Premium account allows for unlimited products and unlimited modules and unlimited classrooms. And so that way, because of the fact that you are a part of the Remote Wellness Academy bonus that we've gone ahead and taken care of on your behalf, you are going to be able to have as many products, as many modules, as many classrooms as you would want, versus, let's say, softwares like Kajabi limit you to 3 products, and that's $150 a month, right? And so that's the beautiful thing about having TCK. So you are going to go ahead and be able to click on like start building on your account, and it's going to walk you through that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over here to products, and I'm just going to go ahead and, let's say, hypothetically open up, let's say, like a marathon course. Okay, now once you open up a marathon course, you're going to see a couple different things on here. Let me go ahead and expand this so you can see this along with me, is that on the marathon course, you're going to see that there is the outline section. We're going to go over the details, the customize, the offers, and the comments. Okay, so this is the behind the scenes of what a classroom looks like. And you can come in here and you can add, like, these would be different modules. So let's say you have an introduction module, a fundamentals, what, why, how, advanced tips. And then each of the individual sections within the modules are the actual trainings or the actual lessons. Now, a couple other things on here, you can go ahead and use this plus button, right? You can go ahead and add more modules if you needed to, or add more lessons. Over here, you can go ahead and click on and decide if this is going to be published, if it's going to be in draft mode, if it's going to be locked, or if it's going to be dripped. And so the drip feature on here is what is called, basically, when somebody is put into the classroom, how long is it until something is unlocked and released for them? So you will know this from the RWA Classroom. We have drip features enabled for many of the trainings. And so that's why, okay, after they join the program, only release this training or only release this module after this amount of days, right? So that's something that you are able to go ahead and do as well, both on the module level as well as on, actually, I stand corrected there. You cannot do it on the lesson level. So you can only do it on the module level on here, okay? Then you can go ahead and actually collapse the different sections if you wanted to as well. And then the other point that I want to go ahead and mention here is that you are able to go ahead and actually come in here and click preview as well if you wanted to, and that will actually show you what the actual entire program looks like. Okay, so that is the outline section within a specific course. All right, so let me go ahead and make sure I didn't miss anything out on here. Product structure we talked about, preview, published versus draft versus locked versus drip. Perfect. Awesome. We've now talked about the outline section. Now I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the details section on here. So the details section is where you can go ahead and play around with the title of your course, the description of it. This is also going to be where you can go ahead and create a product thumbnail. And so you can actually go into Canva, which is a free account that you have, which is the design program, and they give you the recommended dimensions, and you can make a document with those dimensions and create a thumbnail for your program. Okay. The other things that you do have on here, if you go ahead and expand this customization section on here, you can mess around with the instructor, the headshot. They have the recommended dimensions for the headshot as well, the name, the title, the bio, all of that, the logo image, everything is customizable within the actual program. So if I come in here and show you what this looks like, I can actually go back over here to outline and then go ahead and click on preview, and you will see that it opens up to the actual preview of what it looks like on here, right? So you'll see this is the actual introduction module, and then I do have the actual lesson in here, right here, okay? And then it shows the instructor if I wanted to be able to, show the instructor. And then there's also themes that I'll show you where the themes are. So you'll see all of the modules and all of the trainings and lessons underneath there. And then let me go ahead and, while I'm back over here at outline, let me show you what this looks like, right? So I can go ahead and preview this specific training if I wanted to, just like that. And then if I go ahead and click into the actual training, you'll see here I can go ahead and upload a video. I can control the visibility of it. I can actually have a thumbnail for this specific training. So you know how we have all these nice images that we've designed ourselves at RWA, that is all included that you can put over there. The title of this, the category of this, the category is basically what module is in. You can have a description underneath there as well as any files that you would like to add for action steps, maybe, things like that. You can also link Google Documents, Google Slides, Google Sheets, whatever you want to link, you can do so in here. And then all of that is within the actual training section, okay? So then if we go back over here to details, again, that is where the instructor is, right? What we talked about on there. So we went ahead and walked through that. The favicon image in terms of what shows up in the tab on the browser. Advanced, this is like, CSS and advanced stuff. I have no idea what the heck any of this is. So if you want to learn, you can, but I don't know what any of that is, okay? So in customization, that is the details section of the actual online classroom. From there, we're going to go ahead and move on next into the customize section. The customize section is where you can go ahead and have themes for your actual program. So you'll see on here, there's a classic theme, a New York theme, a Niue theme. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that is what that looks like on there. So you can have on there. And then I know TCK is regularly adding more and more themes to their online classroom. Okay, so that is where the customize section is. Next up, we're going to go ahead and then go back and talk about offers. Okay, now here's how this works, is that inside of TCK, you have a course, or a product is what I should say. You have a product, so let's make this a P, and then inside of the product is going to be where your actual classroom is, right? You got the modules and you got the trainings and all that kind of stuff. Now you have to actually make an offer and put the product and attach it to the offer, and then you take the student and you go ahead and put the student into the actual offer, so that way they get access to the program. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to walk you through how to create an offer, so that way you can actually go ahead and assign this to a student. Okay, so let me go over here to memberships. You then go over here to offers, and then you go ahead and click on create offer. And then let's say, for example, we make this test, and then you can go ahead and select what product you want to be inside of this offer. So we come over here, we click, let's say, marathon course, right? And then we click on create. And then just like that, I've now created an offer. Okay, now I can have like a pricing for the offer. I can go ahead and, decide if it's going to be published or not. All of this stuff is on the offer level. Now, there's a lot more features in here that I myself don't know how to do everything on. Obviously, the documentation for TCK is going to be there, but you can always have a logo and a dimension for all this stuff for the offer level. So there's the offer level, and then there is the product level, and then you can actually even charge for your online classroom. If you connect it up to Stripe, you can actually connect all of that as well. So if you go back over here to the guide, you're going to see that in order to be able to enroll a student into your classroom, you need to make a product a part of an offer. Okay, so that's what we went ahead and did. I'm going to walk you through exactly how to be able to put a student into an offer right now. So what we're going to do is we've gone ahead and created this test offer. We're going to go over here to contacts. We're then going to select the contact. And then on the left side here, if we scroll down, we can come all the way down here to offers, right? So I'm going to take this one off. This was just like a test one. And I can select what offer that I want to go ahead and put this student in. Now you're going to notice that there's a test offer, but I actually have, I believe, 2 offers built out. Let me go ahead and show you over here. So offers. And then if I go over here to test offer, and then I have one in draft, that's also test, right? So let me go ahead and put like test live, let's say, for example, right? Or let's say put like test 1, 2, 3. So because this offer is in draft, that's why it wasn't showing up in the other page over there. So I have to click on publish, then I click on save, then I go to contacts, then I select the contact, then I scroll down all the way on the left side. And then once I've actually scrolled, then you'll be able to see over here, if I take this one out, and then I go ahead and click select offers, you'll see that there are 2 offers on there because I had one offer from before, and then I just went ahead and created another test offer with you guys live right now. So I can actually put the person into both of those offers if I really wanted to, okay? And so all of that is something that I can go ahead and do. And then once I actually do that, they're going to have access to that course that I went ahead and attached to that offer, okay? I hope that makes sense. Obviously, TCK has much more documentation around this. We're kind of just introducing this to you. A couple other things I want to walk you through is in terms of membership analytics as well. So if I go back over here to sites, memberships, and then I go over to analytics, that is going to allow me to be able to see what students are where inside of the classroom, right? So there's course progress. And then also with memberships, I can create assessments. So I can create like, fill in the blanks and all this other sort of assessments. We don't use it that much because I don't really like assessments too much. But again, that is an option for you. This is your program, your transformation program, however you want to do it. But you can also see the results of assessments as well with all of those analytics right there. Okay, so that is analytics that I wanted to show you, assessment results if you create assessments for your students. Next up, and this is very important, I want to walk you through the settings of this. Now, there's a lot of settings. Let me go ahead and walk you through these so that way you are familiar with this. Okay, so site details. Site details is going to be where you can go ahead and create a subdomain for all of this. So let's say, for example, you have, you connect your domain here and you want your program to live on a subdomain. So you want it to be, let's say, like training.nutrifitwellness.com or something like that, right? So you can actually do that by coming over here and connecting a subdomain. And there's a whole, article around this on how to do this. I'm not going to outline the specifics of this here because obviously this is just an introduction to this, but you can also have your support email here, your support phone number, and I'm going to walk you through the magic link as well. So just like you have in your classroom, you can actually create magic links for your classroom as well. And then obviously there's some advanced coding stuff on here. There's some branding around this on the site details side of things. So this is going to be what students are going to see, or your students are going to see if you use the online classroom, okay? And I'll walk you through the magic link right now. So if I go ahead and click on generate magic link, you will see that if I go ahead and I go back now, so I clicked on that, it doesn't show anything, but then if I go back and I come back here, it shows me the magic link. And what I do here is if I go ahead and select this, I copy this, and I go back over to contacts, and I send this over in an SMS or an email over to the student, what's going to happen is that if they click on this specific link, they are not going to have to use a username or a password in order to actually log into their program. And so we love that because of the fact that I don't think there's anybody who's trying to hack in to a classroom. Like, yeah, they try to hack into like bank accounts and stuff, but I don't know if they're trying to hack into a classroom. And so that's why we go ahead and give out magic links, because they're very easy for students to use. And you're going to see on here that it actually has a token in which when I click the send button on here, this link is automatically going to go ahead and input the email of whoever's contact this is right in here. So that way this magic link is automatically going to be customized for this student. And I just got to go ahead and click on send right there. Okay, so that is how the magic link works that you can send to your students. So that way they don't have to remember a username or password. They just click on the link. All right. And so like I said, you click on generate magic link and then you can go ahead and send it over to your students. Next up, let's go back over here to sites, and then we're going to go back to memberships and settings. And then I want to walk you through custom domains. This is where you would go ahead and set up your custom domain if that's what you wanted, right? Please make sure you have an A record or a CNAME record pointed, You can go ahead and use the support articles to set that up if you wanted your classroom to be on your own domain name. After that, the other settings that I want to walk you through are email settings. This is going to be like your welcome email and your drip email. There's a whole bunch of articles on how to customize all of this. So that way, when you put a student into a classroom, you can customize the welcome email that they get, whether or not it includes the magic link in there, whether it includes their username and their password, all of that kind of stuff. You can go ahead and do that, as well as the drip email. So when a new category or a new module or a new training is available for them as a result of a drip, remember that drip feature is like after they join, it releases it to them after a certain number of days. You can customize the email that happens for that as well. Okay, so that's the email settings. And then finally, you have app settings. And so you can actually go ahead and have your students log in via what it looks like on the app side of things and what all of that looks like as well. Okay, so all of those are resources that are available for you when we are talking about the online classroom. Again, remember, the theme of this entire training is to give you an introduction to these tools so that way you can go ahead and have them in the back of your mind and really start to be able to innovate and get creative about when you want to be able to use them, right? Maybe it's not applicable to you right now. Maybe you're like, you know what, this might not be something I want to mess around with. But if you wanted to, we're introducing you to these so that way you know that they exist and you know how to be able to use them when you want. Okay, so make sure you take ownership and have freedom around this. You have 1,000 gazillion% permission to get creative and make any and all of this better if you would like. Okay, so like we've talked about in the main training, there's a lot of flexibility around this and however you want to actually use this. But here is the big warning, and this is what I want to go ahead and warn you about. We talked about it when we talked about the SMS text and the email, and I want to go ahead and warn you again right now. Okay, the warning to this is that being able to use all of this technology is absolutely a skill. And remember, skill equals knowledge times reps. And so through this knowledge, right before this training, you started off being unconsciously incompetent. You didn't even know that any of this existed, and you didn't even know that you were terrible at online classrooms and membership sites in TCK. You didn't know it existed. And so you were, ignorance is bliss. And so now what's happening is that through this knowledge that you're getting, you're starting to realize, oh, dang, I am significantly incompetent in knowing all of these things and all of the features and all the benefits that I get as a result of my TCK bonus. And I am so incompetent, I don't even know how I'm going to use the online classroom in my transformation program. And guess what? That's okay. Because as long as you stick with it, knowledge times reps, you're going to be able to go ahead and have even more ideas, because being able to use this is a skill. And so the more repetition you get with using online classrooms inside of TCK, it's going to become automatic for you, and you're going to be able to go ahead and do this unconsciously and be competent around it as well. So if you might be overwhelmed with this, don't let it be overwhelming for you, and I promise you it will become easier and easier and easier. And then absolutely make sure that you are taking advantage of TCK's priority support articles, because they have so many articles on this. If you literally just go over to the priority support help library, the question mark, and you type in memberships, there's literally so much documentation that you can learn and develop your skill around using this feature. And if you want to go ahead and include it inside of your online education program. Okay. And then obviously they have the support as well. Okay. So that is the step-by-step instructions around the online classroom, being able to set it up. And if you wanted to go ahead and utilize it as a resource inside of your transformation product and inside of your transformation program. So make sure you go ahead and explore that. That is going to be an action step underneath this training. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and cut back over to the main training. All right, welcome back from that mini training that walked you through the step-by-step instructions for setting up an online classroom inside of the Client Kit. Like we've already said many times inside of this training, that these are just the tools, right? We're exposing you to the tools of what is possible. And so then that way, if you ever have an idea, or you're like, you know what, I want to include this in my program, I want to include this in my online business, you have all of these tools at your disposal, and you know exactly how to be able to potentially use them. So we're just introducing you to all of that. Okay, so the question is, where do we go from here? Well, the beautiful thing about it is that now that we've talked about the support and now that we've talked about the online classroom, we're now going to go ahead and get into that final pillar, and we're going to go ahead and talk about your program's community. Okay, so a student or client community is honestly a great tool to be able to add to a transformation product, because it helps with the flywheel effect for a transformation program. As you get more students and as more engaged your community gets, the more students are able to connect, they're able to learn from each other, they're able to go ahead and really get better results because of that flywheel effect. So you get less support tickets because students are helping each other. All of it works together, and the students are actually getting more and more value out of the community that way as well. And so obviously, as a Remote Wellness Academy student, you have seen the benefits of being a part of the RWA student community, right? Especially in an online world where, hey, we have this online program and we're running everything through online. We haven't met each other in person. There's kind of like a disconnect that happens because everything is virtual. And so when you have an online community, it allows for students to be able to feel more connected with other students who are on the same journey as them. But here's the thing. That entire process of having the students connect with other students so that way they have that camaraderie, they have that community, all of that comes with one big condition. What is that condition? Is that if you actually have enough students to even be able to create a community. Almost by definition, a community means that it has to have like more than one person, right? And so what that means is that a student community may not be beneficial for you in the beginning of your journey, as a remote wellness practitioner and as you are opening up your remote wellness practice is because maybe you have a couple test clients, maybe you have a couple test students, maybe you have a couple paid students, right? And so really, until you get to the point where you have about 5 one-on-one students, right? Or maybe you have enough students who are maybe on the same part of the program, right? Like a lot of students are maybe on the sleep coaching call or on the steps coaching call or whatever that might be, that will allow them to be able to network together. Until you get to that point, really a community doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because you're not going to get a lot of engagement with it. Now, again, that's only from our experience. You might have a creative idea in which it makes sense that you only have 2 students and you find a way to be able to have them connect together. We're going to go over some ideas here in just a second. And you might say, you know what? That 5 one-on-one students kind of thing, hey, you know what? I found a way to be able to go ahead and get over that, right? And so at the end of the day, we're just going ahead and speaking from our experience. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide if that actually makes sense for you. Now, the other concern that might actually come up as you are talking about, having 5 one-on-one students in a community together is like, hey, what if I only have 5 to 10 students in my community? Doesn't that make me look small? Like, what if I don't want my students to know that I only have 5 students inside of my program? Now, I want to make this clear. That type of thinking is absolutely amateur, newbie, beginner thinking. And the reason I say that is because I know when we first started, we felt and thought the exact same way when we started our community and we only had 8 people in it. And now all of a sudden we have, where we are now, over 200, 300, 400 people who are active inside of the community. Obviously, we were able to go from 8 people and then grow it from there. Because what you got to remind yourself is that all big things start small, okay? Now, again, we're just sharing our experience. You're more than welcome to do whatever it is that you want to do, but I'm just going ahead and sharing with you that for us, we realized that when we started, that thinking that, I don't want students to know that I'm small and all this kind of stuff, own it, right? Find a way to be able to frame that in your way, right? Go back to the reframing training. We've talked about this before, is that reframe that in your mind that there is power in being small, right? Maybe the students are getting more support from you, and that's why it's small. That's why it's a benefit to the students, right? Versus if you had 200, 300 students, you wouldn't be able to read maybe all of the comments or reply everything one-on-one and all that kind of stuff. And so when you reframe that in your mind, you all of a sudden realize that it doesn't matter how many people are in the community, right? Because at the end of the day, it is actually maybe a benefit for you. But here's the thing. You also want to keep in mind that this is really your program and your community. So you get to decide what it is that you want to do. If you feel, you know what, I don't want to have a community right now because I don't see the benefit of it, sure, don't have a community. It's not that big of a deal. It's not going to make or break anything. And so don't sweat the small stuff. Don't try to major in the minors, right? Just make sure that you are not freaking yourself out about this too much. So that way you're not trying to go ahead and put obstacles in the way that don't need to be there. So I'm going ahead and reminding you, when we started our community, we had 8 people in there, and then from there we only grew and got better. Now, on that point, the other point that I do want to go ahead and elaborate a little bit more on is we talked about it when we talked about the support section of things and how community actually helps with support. So the thing is that community has a lot of different elements to it, right? It actually provides the networking effect. It allows students to be able to get better results because of the fact that they're helping all each other. But the big thing that it also helps with is that it also ties in with the flywheel of adding support. And so a community creates a synergy effect between students that allows for students to have their questions answered by learning from other students. And so when a student asks a question, they are most likely to be able to ask a question that also other students have. And so when they actually ask it in the student community, it automatically reduces the amount of support tickets that you have to provide or the amount of support that you have to provide in general, because multiple students are getting the same question answered at the same time. On top of that, a community also allows for more advanced students inside of the program to be able to mentor and nurture more beginner students, right? So maybe you answered this question in the past to one student, right? Let's say to Jack, and then Tina joins the program later on, and Tina has the same question. Now, what you're going to start to notice is that before you even get a chance to reply to the question of Tina, Jack jumps in here and he actually answers Tina's question, right? And so it allows you to be able to then further offload some of that support that you need to provide. Because here's the truth. At the end of the day, even though you are the RWP, you're kind of just guiding everyone through this process, that's all you're really doing. You're guiding them. You're the enthusiast who might just be a couple steps ahead. But what works for you may not always necessarily work for every single student. And so when you have other students who can provide their feedback, they can actually share their experiences and what works for them. And what ends up happening is that sometimes you're going to find that what the student is recommending, what Jack is recommending to Tina, it might be different than what works for you, but that actually works for Tina better than what you would have told Tina in the first place. And so as a result, in a way that you start to get insight that you never would have thought about. Now, again, remember, this only applies if you have enough students in your program at one time in order to actually benefit from community. And so maybe when starting out, you might not have enough students to be able to use this kind of leverage, but we're just putting this tool on the table. So as you start to grow and as you start to expand, you have in the back of your mind how all of this comes together in a way that really creates a community and kind of offloads some of that support as you grow from there. And so just to provide you some additional ideas on how you might be able to use community maybe now or in the future is really once you get to the point where you have enough students, there are so many dang ideas. Like honestly, if you start to get creative with this, like we ourselves start to have ideas on a daily basis about how we can further make our community better and better. We have so many ideas that we don't even have time to implement that many ideas that we have, right? So just for an example, right, is you might have students who might comment their thoughts about an activity during the week on a student community post that was a part of their action step. So maybe, let's say for example, you have them do a 6-day experiment, and then in the action step that you give them on the coaching call, you tell them, hey, you're going to complete, maybe the hunger and fullness skill activity. And what I want you to do is, yes, you're going to maybe text message me for accountability, hypothetically, or I'm just throwing it out there. And then I want you to go ahead and use this link to go to the student community post, and I want you to put your thoughts on the activity in the student community, right? And so that way other students are seeing, oh dang, I'm not the only one who is going through this hunger and fullness thing, right? Or maybe a student messages you a question about an activity and you say, hey, do me a favor, this is an amazing question. Go ahead and ask that question on the student community post so that way other students can benefit from the answer because I got an amazing answer for you, right? That's just one example. Another one might be a steps challenge competition, right? Maybe you have students, when they actually have their steps watch, they go ahead and encourage each other by commenting on a steps post. So maybe in your student community, you have a post called the steps post, and then every single day at the end of the day or the next day, early morning, every student goes in and puts on how much steps they got. Maybe you even have to have them make a screenshot or take a picture of their steps watch and how many steps they got, and then put that in the comment. And so therefore it helps with the accountability aspect, it helps with the support aspect, and now you got a little bit of a community running there. Another idea could be maybe for 1 week, every single night, students go ahead and publicly update a student community post on how their sleep was. And maybe they go ahead and you request and ask other students to provide encouragement, and you kind of make it a part of the requirement in the action steps. Like, hey, you're going to comment on the student community post, and I want you to be able to reply and give engagement or encouragement or tips to another student for the sleep challenge. Again, all of these are just examples, but you can really start to see how there is unlimited potential and possibility of all of the different opportunity that you have to include community within your program and within your coaching calls, whether that be on the one-on-one model or the hybrid model. And so really sky is the limit on how resourceful and creative that you can get on how you want to include community with your student. And then on top of that, you can honestly start to look at even what we are doing, right? Even at Remote Wellness Academy, we ourselves are looking at other education programs out there. We're always still learning about different ideas, right? You can take a lot of the ideas that we've had in including community, right? The way that we communicate, we tell you guys how to ask questions, we walk you through that, right? But then even us, we get so many more amazing ideas on a regular basis in terms of accountability. We've noticed recently that some students are having difficulty getting through some of the longer trainings. So we've gone ahead and come up with some potential systems around accountability and encouragement and partnering students up. All of this kind of stuff is really, really, really amazing, where there are unlimited possibilities that you can implement on how to be able to go ahead and provide that community element, which then feeds the support, it feeds the accountability, it feeds the results, it feeds the training. It really works like an entire environment, like an ecosystem that all works together. And so what we want to go ahead and do right now is I want to go ahead and walk you through the step-by-step instructions on if you decided that you wanted to go ahead and set up a community. I'm going to walk you through how to be able to do that. It's going to be completely free. So that way, if you decided to maybe set it up and then maybe not use it for a long period of time, that's completely up to you, right? Maybe you decide, hey, I'm just going to maybe set it up and then not use it for the next year. Or maybe you decide, you know what, I'm not going to set it up right now, but I know where the step-by-step instructions are in case I ever do want to set it up. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to walk you through, in typical RWA over-delivery fashion, the step-by-step process of setting up your community, so that way you never have to get stuck with it. And we're going to go ahead and do that via a mini training that we're going to go ahead and cut over to right now. All right, welcome to this mini training about the step-by-step instructions of setting up your community. Now, remember, everything that we're about to talk about is completely optional in the one-on-one model, so it may or may not be relevant to you, but it is good to go ahead and just maybe set it up, maybe get experience with it because it might be helpful. Now, the platform that we use in order to be able to set up the student community is right now Facebook. Now, there are many other platforms that exist out there. We just found that the vast majority of people tend to have a Facebook account, so it is easier, but there are other platforms out there like school.com and circle.so and a whole bunch of other platforms. And so it really does depend on you. As of right now, we do use Facebook and Facebook groups for our student community because we found that it's free, it's cheap, and it's very easy to use. Now, this might be something that we change in the future, but as of right now, it is Facebook. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk you through and walk you through the step-by-step instructions of being able to set up your community in typical RWA over delivery fashion. Okay, so inside of the guide, there are going to be a few links that are going to be helpful for you. The very first thing we're going to go ahead and do is do the actual Facebook group creation. Okay, so you're going to have to go over to facebook.com/group/discover. And when you actually do that, then you're going to actually be able to come over here and create a new group. Okay, so you come over here, you create a new group, and then from here, you'll be able to go ahead and decide the name of your community. You're able to go ahead and decide the privacy of your community. And then from there, you'll be able to go ahead and actually create your community as well. So let's say we make it private, the visibility, let's say, for example, only visible, right? So we want to make it visible so people can search for it maybe, or hidden, totally up to you. And then we go ahead and click on create. Okay, so let's say we go ahead and click on create. We're going to now have a blank empty community. Okay, now couple things on this is that we're going to walk you through the Facebook group settings that typically we end up using. Now, couple things on here. Facebook changes their, platform and, how their UI looks all the time. And so you want to use your best judgment. If things don't look exactly the same way, that's fine. But what you're going to do here is on the Facebook group on the side of things, you're going to go all the way down here and you're going to go over to group settings. And then over here, there's going to be a bunch of settings that you can change. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but you're going to notice inside of the guide that you can change the name and description. You can change the privacy. You can change the location if you want. You can have a custom web address for your student community if you want. Okay, you can go ahead and manage the membership of who can actually join as well as who can actually post, right? And so anybody in the group can post, but then maybe you want to have a little bit more control of actually having to approve those posts, right? And so there you might go ahead and come in here and change and say, okay, you know what? A member's posts must be approved by an admin. Okay, that might be good. And so all of these settings that we recommend are inside of the guide, so you can go ahead and utilize those if you need them. Okay, so I would highly recommend looking at the guide for all of the settings if this ends up being something that you go ahead and use. Okay, from there, next up, I want to go ahead and talk to you about the cover photo as well as the student community post images. Okay, so if we go back over here to community home, you're going to see that this cover photo is actually editable, right? Now, what we've gone ahead and done is that we've gone ahead and actually created the template for you. And so this is, like I said, in typical RW over delivery fashion. We want to make this as easy as possible. Again, I don't think there is any school, academy, or university on the planet that does this much over delivery for their students because we want to eat as much complexity of this entire process for you. And so you're going to notice that inside of the guide, as well as inside of the action steps, there is a link to a Canva template. Okay, when you actually open up that link, it is going to take you over to something that looks like this. And so this is a template that we have built for you that is literally the exact same one that we have for our student community. And you can go ahead and import that into your account and then go ahead and just literally edit the name, edit the logo, add your logo to it, edit the icons if you want. You might not want to use the same icons that we have on there. We're thinking of editing this and updating this soon as well. But the cover photo is pretty much already built out for you. And then all you do is you export it from Canva, you go back over to your Facebook group, and then you go ahead and edit that and upload that there. Okay, so that is the first over delivery template that we have provided for you. The second over delivery template is the student community post images. Okay, so as you're going to notice inside of the RWA student community, we have images for all of our trainings that match inside of the online classroom. And so what we've gone ahead and done is we thought, hey, why have our students go out there and create those images by themselves from scratch? That's silly. We've already done the work for them. We've already ate the complexity for them. Let's go ahead and make it easy for them and provide you the template. And so we actually have a template that already has, let me go ahead and open this up right here, this other tab, and this already has so many different types. As you're going to notice, a lot of these are going to look similar because of the fact that we've already done the complex work of literally creating these and hiring designers and doing all that kind of stuff. Well, why shouldn't you benefit from that, right? And so this is a template that you can import into your Canva account. And then if you wanted to go ahead and have these be images for the trainings that you want to have your students comment on, if you decided to use a student community either now or in the future, well, guess what? You already have the template and you can start using those and download those from Canva and then just post them as a student community post, the exact same way that you have been doing as an RWA student, right? And so that is going to be step number 4 of this entire process. Step number 5 is all about getting engagement. So we talk about this inside of the main training, but maybe you decide to go ahead and make it an action step after your coaching calls to say, hey, I want you to be able to go ahead and, after you complete this activity, go into the student community and comment on this, right? Maybe you can also go ahead and send them a link to a post via a text message in TCK. So maybe it's a part of an automation in a workflow that you go ahead and include. And so it's like, okay, cool. Hey, you know what? You're going to go ahead and do the 6-day steps challenge. Well, guess what? I'm going to go ahead and put you into this workflow. Obviously, you don't say this to the student, but on the back end, it's like a workflow where it has already been designed with text messages and emails to be able to remind them for that specific activity, maybe, right? And then the link for the student community post is in the text message that is automatically sent out from the workflow. Just thinking out loud here, right? There's a lot of things that you could do. You could add them to a workflow, which will automatically have all of that in there. And so that's some of the different ways that you can get engagement in the one-on-one model, right? And then obviously you've seen examples of the hybrid model because obviously you're a student in a hybrid classroom to be able to see how we utilize those same things, right? And then step number 6 is actually getting new students to join the community that you've actually created. And so if you remember, when you joined RWA, we had an intake form and we had a kickoff call homework or a kickoff onboarding homework for you to complete. And one of the steps in that homework was for you to go ahead and join the student community. And so we're actually going to be walking you through how to be able to set up all of that. And we're going to go ahead and give you our actual onboarding intake form and our actual onboarding intake homework that you're going to go ahead and be able to import into your accounts and literally just edit the link if you wanted to use a student community and literally just have your students join your student community if you decided to use it on that homework, right? And so all of that is going to be on a separate training in the onboarding training when we talk about that and literally walk you through step by step on how to actually set that up. But for the most part, that is pretty much all it takes in order to get the community set up. And then again, remember, there are unlimited possibilities on how to actually use a student community. Biggest thing on here, just remember, skill equals knowledge times reps. And so you're getting the knowledge, and then through repetition of doing all of this stuff on Facebook and Canva and templates and all of this kind of stuff, you're going to get better and better and better at it until it becomes unconsciously competent for you to be able to do that. Okay, so with that being said, this has been the step-by-step instructions for the community setup. So if you decide that you want to explore this, make sure you go ahead and do so. And then with that being said, let's go ahead and cut back over to the main training. All right, welcome back from that mini training about the step-by-step instructions of setting up your community. Again, like we've talked about before, there are literally unlimited possibilities of how you can use support and community and training and all of them working together. Maybe you have a little bit of an online classroom there, then you got a link in the online classroom to a student community post, and so many possibilities that is going to be an invaluable resource for you as you go ahead and get your online business launched, as you become a remote wellness practitioner and get your remote wellness practice launched as well. And so as we start to close out this training, we're going to go ahead and really start to bring everything that we've talked about together so that way you can really start to see, right, as we've gone ahead and gone through this entire training, how much flexibility there is with support and community, right? If you decided that you wanted to go ahead and provide that support and community, or when you decided to provide that support and community, you're going to see that there are so many different tools and so many different options. And so our goal was to really provide you with a good introduction to all of those tools that are available for you for support and community. And of course, if you ever need help with the strategy of how to use these tools, then obviously you're more than welcome to be able to discuss that and discuss your ideas with us on the coaching calls and the office hours. But the beautiful thing about being able to have all of these tools is that it provides that customization that over time you'll be able to go ahead and make your product better and better and better, right? Well, our goal is to be able to give you all of the tools that we ourselves use to be able to make a 7- and 8-figure income online. Now, I obviously understand right now you're trying to get to maybe 6 figures. You're saying, okay, cool, I want to get to 100,000, right? But if you wanted to say, you know what, I want to be able to get to 1 million. I want to be able to get to 10 million. Well, guess what? It's not anything different. It's not some secret pill. It's not some magic that's going on. It's the exact same tools. It's just making them better and better and better, right? There is no difference between the tools that we are using and the tools that you have access to. The only difference is that we have equipped ourselves with the skill set on how to be able to make the product better, on how to be able to use these tools at a higher level. And so it ends up just being the skills of using the tools so that way we can provide more value. And so over time, as you use these tools more and more, you're going to be able to learn how to be able to customize them in innovative and unique ways that will allow you to be able to make your product better and better. And so I would urge you, look at the way that we run our business, Remote Wellness Academy, as a mirror for what it is that you will be doing. We also highly encourage, really look out in the marketplace, look at other businesses in the online space as a mirror for what you are going to be doing, right? We are to this day learning so much from so many different companies in the online education coaching space. And we're not necessarily learning from them on what they are teaching, but more so on the creative side of what they are doing. Sometimes we will also even just purchase a program literally only for the sake of just seeing what it is that they are doing. We're like, that's very interesting. We know that their program has nothing to do with us. We don't really care about what they are teaching. We just want to be able to learn the logistics and the operations around how they run their community, how they be able to do this specific thing within their community, right? We really liked how they did that. And so that really allows you to be able to learn from so many different people in the marketplace. And the beauty of having a tool like the Client Kit in our pocket is that it allows us to be able to replicate literally anything that anybody else is doing in the entire market, but we can do it even better because everything is all in one place. And so while other people in this entire marketplace might have to use, 4 or 5 different softwares and, kind of Frankenstein something together in order to build a solution for their customers, we can basically take their understanding, we can take the idea, we can take the innovation and say, you know what? We know how we can do this at a better level because our operations are better. Our system is better, right? And so for example, like what Amazon did with Walmart, right? If you look at Jeff Bezos and how he got the idea of having an everything store, is that he looked at Walmart and he's like, wow, they have everything, but I can see where I can go ahead and make this even better because I have different sorts of operations. I have different sort of skills. I'm going to go ahead and do this in the online space, right? And then Walmart had to learn from Amazon for the online space. And so this is how businesses learn from each other. We all get better together. That is how you're able to go ahead and do that, okay? So the big thing you want to do is make sure that you are not just limiting yourself from only learning about what Remote Wellness Academy is doing when it comes to support and community and coaching and those kinds of things, because we ourselves are learning on a daily basis on how to be able to improve our support and our community, and we're learning what is happening in the marketplace. Because remember, our goal for this program is to really provide you the foundational tools, the foundational education, the foundational skills for you to be able to go out there and know how to think on your own, so that way you can innovate, create, build, and be resourceful in your online business for decades to come into the future, so that way you are not tied to us for the rest of your life. Because as Albert Einstein said, education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. And so that's what we are doing, is we are liberating you and freeing you and empowering you, so that way you can actually know how to be able to do this on your own. And so these are the tools that are going to allow you to be able to do that with your support, with your community, with the online classroom. And then guess what? Maybe there might come one day where the grasshopper, right, the RWA student surpasses the sensei, right, the master who's been learning everything, right? And that happens. It happens all the time. This is the goal of getting better and having mentorship, and we do it with respect and we do it with understanding. It doesn't mean that we have to poo-poo on the person that got us to where we got to. No, these are all stepping stones. I always say that if I have seen further, it is because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. That is a quote from Isaac Newton, and I love that quote because a lot of times when people are learning, especially in this education space, when they're learning how to be able to make an income online, you're going to have a lot of mentors in this journey, right? You're going to resonate with certain people differently, but from every single person, you are learning a lesson, and that is going to allowing you to be able to go ahead and get further and further and further. And so I would urge you, really go out there and start to think, be resourceful, be creative, innovate, because that is how you're going to be able to find your voice, not only in your coaching calls, but also how you want to be able to run your online business, how you want to be able to run and create an income for yourself online. We're providing you all the tools. We're giving you all the resources. We're empowering you. We're saying, hey, we are here to support you, right? As much as we can. but please go out there and put in the dang work so that way you can ultimately be successful with this, because we cannot put in the work for you. We cannot think for you and your specific situation. That is going to be up to you, but we're going to give you everything that we have in order for you to be successful throughout this entire process. And so that ultimately is the foundation and the goal of this program, is to teach you to be able to think. And so as we start to close out this training, let's go ahead and talk about your engagement question for this training. Very similar to the previous trainings here. Fill in the blank. I thought this training was XYZ. What are your thoughts on this training? What did you like and enjoy about this training? Any takeaways, insights, or ahas? And then, do you have any questions? Anything that we discussed inside of this training, if you had any questions, please make sure that you go ahead and let us know. Just a reminder on asking questions, please make sure that you do go ahead and tag the page RWA Coaches, so that way we do get a notification, because we don't want to miss your question. So here it is, setting the expectation of how to be able to get support, right? And then if we do miss your question, if somebody doesn't get back to you, please make sure you go ahead and send us a support email. You can use the chat icon at the bottom right of your classroom, or you can go ahead and email us as well. Coaching calls are available for you. And if you have any other questions as well, please make sure that you are using the appropriate support channels. There you go. See, now you understand the behind the scenes psychology of how we've been able to go ahead and design all of this for you, right? Now, in terms of your action steps, let's go ahead and talk about those right now. Altogether, you are going to have 9 action steps. Number 1, you want to go ahead and make sure and watch and study this training in full. Number 2, go ahead and complete the engagement question for this training above that we just talked about. Go ahead and set up your TCK for text messages, set up your TCK for emails. You want to make sure that you test the email and text messaging, so that way it's working on your account. You want to explore and create some workflows, so that way you know how to be able to use them. Create and explore an online classroom. If you decide that that is something you want to use, you want to be able to have that tool in your tool belt at least. You want to go ahead and import the Canva community templates into your Canva account. Even if you are not going to be setting up a community at this time, it is a good idea to go ahead and get those templates and import them into your account, so that way you have them. And then once you go ahead and complete all of that, go ahead and either comment or reply to your previous comment and let us know, hey, did you set up your TCK for email and text, right? Did you send a text or email to yourself? How did that go? Did you explore the TCK workflows? What ideas do you have about what else you could use the TCK workflows for? Did you go ahead and create an online classroom as a test? What are your thoughts that come to mind specifically about how to be able to use that for your program? And then on top of that, what are your thoughts on using a student community in your program, right? When do you think you're going to use it? And then did you already go ahead and import those Canva templates into your account? And so this is going to allow us to be able to hold you accountable. So if we don't see that comment on there, we're going to go ahead and wonder if you actually went ahead and completed those. And so you can see exactly what it is that we are teaching you is exactly the same things that we use inside of our own program, right? We use the student community for that accountability, as you are seeing, right? And so it allows you to be able to see exactly the same things you're going to be doing inside of your online business, inside of your online remote wellness practice, are exactly the same things that have been working for you as well. And so that's proof in the pudding on how to be able to execute on that. Okay, so with that being said, make sure you go out there and get those action steps done. And I'm super excited for you to go ahead and get your program's support and community rocking and rolling. This is Coach Yasin checking out, and I will catch you inside of the next training.